Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 968 of the news. It's good to see you all once again, and today we have video proof of the North Koreans spotted inside of Russia, and they want some snow made from coffee, or coffee made from snow. But it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been getting incredibly concerning news today from the Korean Peninsula and from the far east of the Russian Federation, as video and picture evidence has now emerged confirming that North Korean soldiers have entered the Russian Federation and are now conducting actions preparing for actual frontline combat duties inside of Ukraine. Simultaneously, we've also been able to hear that a Russian Air Force aircraft has currently left Pyongyang, most likely with most of the senior officers of these brigades heading into the area around Moscow, where they will be conducting and coordinating efforts with the Russian Ministry of Defense to be able to conduct the war efforts necessary for the North Korean forces inside of Ukraine. At the exact same time, we've been able to hear that this has caused an incredibly serious situation once again on the Korean Peninsula, with South Korea declaring an emergency meeting today, and it appears that South Korea may also be attempting to conduct escalatory actions of their own to match the North Korean actions that have been conducted inside of Ukraine at the moment. Simultaneously, we've also been able to hear an incredibly shocking bombshell statement today, as Vladimir Putin did officially declare that Iran, to get that out correctly without stuttering, Iran is actually now at ally status with the Russian Federation. A first time that the statement has been made, because while we considered that the relationship in between the Russian Federation and Iran was cordial, as we had seen the Iranians shipping weapons and arms to the Russian Federation, we have never heard an official statement from the Russian Federation declaring that the Islamic Republic of Iran is granted ally status. This is going to be greatly changing the situation in the Middle East, and also, once again, tying together the axis of evil in full. The Russians, the Iranians, and by extension, the Iranian proxies are now united all under one single alliance, which we are largely going to be calling the Axis powers on stream from this point forward, along with the North Koreans. Simultaneously, news has continued to come out of Ukraine, showing the incredibly high casualties that the Russian Federation has continued to take today on the front lines, and also showing some limited Ukrainian counteroffensive actions that have been able to reclaim ground in some specific areas of the front line. But we have absolutely huge news today from every single corner of the world, and I'm not making that up. And we've been saying this every single day, that the news is huge. And the news continues to be huge. It's actually crazy to see this, because usually we used to go through somewhat dull moments in the news where the news would kind of die down even for the war in Ukraine, and things would kind of stabilize in the world a little bit, but recently things have only been going up and up from here, and it looks as though things will not be stopping on that track for quite some time. And so moving on,
I would have never personally thought that out of all the situations happening around the world, that North Korea would somehow get to the top of the totem pole, because with the situation in the Middle East popping off so crazily, I thought that was going to be the next big thing that was about to happen. But North Korea pulled an Uno reverse, and now they're trying to take the #1 spot for being the biggest bastard in the world right now, it seems like, by going to Russia.
It really does. It's actually the most shocking twist of the decade at this point that we've seen, with the North Koreans now officially joining the war in Ukraine, not only in statements by the Ukrainian government, but by the North Koreans and the Russians' accounts themselves. They're there. And there's no changing of that reality or fact. U.S. intelligence that came out just a few days ago stating that Zelensky was not telling the truth and that there were no North Koreans in Russia, or there was no attempt at putting North Koreans in Russia, was blatantly inaccurate. As we are seeing today, real video footage coming from eastern Russia, just north of the port of Vladivostok, proving that these North Koreans are there. And to move y'all into what we are seeing today, I'm going to just get y'all to the footage, because I think that nothing can speak better than the raw video picture evidence that we have showing the North Koreans inside of Russia. Now, really quickly, let me move on from the satellite pictures really quickly and actually show y'all the video here. These are North Koreans. Right here. These are actual North Korean soldiers from the Korean People's Army, the armed forces of North Korea, that have been shipped from Korean ports in North Korea along their east coast and into the port of Vladivostok, where they were then shipped further north and into a military training field just north of Vladivostok. Here is the clip from inside of this facility as a Russian is showing these North Koreans being issued Russian military equipment and Russian military weapons. Now,
Very interesting that they're being issued the Russian equipment, that is, because you'd expect that maybe they might be going in with North Korean equipment, but they're going in with Russian equipment. So I wonder if they're trying to blend them in, like with the Russian forces, to like sort of create confusion.
Or there may be an ulterior motive that the Korean People's Army just doesn't have the resources, like I've been saying, or the logistical ability to support these forces as detached North Korean forces, and so there was a compromise made to where North Korean commanders will operate the units, but they'll pretty much be fielded as Russian Federation armed forces with the same equipment going along with it.
Maybe so, man. It could be. I think that really it might be a combination of both. They don't have the equipment to give these soldiers to send them off, which is really bad for a mercenary force because you'd think the mercenaries would have their own equipment they're bringing to the battle, like bring your own phone or something like that, but they don't have anything. And plus, they want to create that confusion. I think they want to send these guys out in the battlefield mixed in with the Russians, so that way there's a little bit of confusion as to who was killed when. Was that a North Korean soldier or a Russian soldier? And they may never be able to tell.
They might not ever be able to tell. And I also want to throw this out there to y'all because this is something that I've seen so many people pointing out in the chat. Everyone's saying that these people look like midgets, and they do. They're incredibly short, and that's actually something incredibly interesting. This is also, once again, a very good indicator that these are North Koreans, and North Koreans only. North Koreans are some of the shortest people in the world, in case you all didn't know, and the reason for that is because of the great malnourishment that their country suffers as a standard of time for the past 3 decades. A lot of these soldiers are in their 20s or somewhere around that time point. So all of them were born after the Great Famine of the very early 90s in North Korea. And for that reason, all of these soldiers, when they were children, were growing up with hardly any food at all. And being malnourished as a child will stunt your development and growth, at least in terms of height and actually developing your body properly. And for that reason, we can see that all of the North Korean soldiers are almost all around the same height. And from what we know, at least from the best analysis that the West can gather, we assume that most North Korean males on average are somewhere in between 5'4" to 5'6" in height. And that is about the average height for any North Korean in the country. So that's actually a pretty shocking thing when you think about it. It really is actual anatomical and medical proof that the entire country of North Korea is heavily malnourished, because you can even tell in this clip alone, they are incredibly short in stature. A clear sign of malnourishment at young age. But moving on
Also,
from that,
unfortunately, I saw Miss Disa say, what's the language barrier like? I'm sure there probably is a big problem with that because obviously they're speaking different languages here. They probably do have translators, but ultimately, though, like for really good field communication, that language barrier is probably going to be a pretty big problem, or at least in my opinion, it might. And it could cause some operational issues, to say the least.
Interestingly enough, we're actually going to be getting to that here in just a little bit because we actually have seen something that indicates that the language barrier probably won't be as big an issue as we were originally assuming, or at least assuming off of this video, and it is a very interesting kind of a situation, but I'm going to have to kind of explain that over time of showing everything that we have right here. But we can see them continuing to get their equipment. And we see our cameraman here wandering around showing us the North Korean soldiers. And as you can see, they are all North Korean. You can clearly tell that they are Koreans. And that's the end of this clip. But moving on from that and into our next one, the other clip that we have, we also were able to see the training grounds that the Russians are using here in this area of the country. And this is a very important thing. This is a clip that we were not able to find today, but it does show the North Korean soldiers fully kitted, apparently conducting some limited amount of training with the Russians, possibly to try and get them familiarized with modern Russian doctrine or tactics, considering that most North Korean tactics are probably completely dated in practice. And we can see that someone was able to geolocate this off the bat immediately. They were able to find this one telephone pole, this one road, and then this one barricade right there. And off of these 3 things, really just these 2, the telephone pole and the barricade, they were able to find this exact spot on this little road. And this exact spot on this little road is in this exact spot of this little base. And this little base is in this exact spot of the Russian Federation, right up north of Vladivostok. So from what we're understanding, here is how it's sort of transpiring at the moment in between North Korea and Russia. North Korean soldiers from the Korean People's Army are being stripped down of all of their uniforms and equipment, boarded onto vessels most likely in the port of Simpo and Chongjin, and then transported across the coastline to Vladivostok. Apparently, the rail corridor is not a suitable option in between the Russian-Korean border, as they are assuming that that may not be able to transport the bulk of infantry that they need in the amount of time possible, and not only that, there may not be rolling stock or additional locomotives that could be requisitioned to operate this emergency service, considering the massive influx of troops that they're trying to transport. So North Korea instead decided, or the Russian Federation decided, to use elements of their Pacific Fleet, or the North Korean Eastern Fleet, to transport these soldiers to Vladivostok. From there, they were integrated into the Russian passenger railroad routes at Vladivostok, most likely a branch line connected to the Trans-Siberian Railway, where they were then transported from Vladivostok and further on north and up into the area around Horol, where these North Korean soldiers are at the moment. This is the kind of picture that we're getting at the moment, at least how the North Korean soldiers were able to get into the Russian Federation. But we were able to see even more indicators, at least in the area of eastern Russia, of North Korean presence within the Russian Federation. We were able to see multiple satellite pictures showing that a large amount of additional equipment and personnel are now being found in the area, and we do believe that these are the Korean People's Army forces that are currently there. We can also see right here as well an active vessel in a North Korean harbor. I believe that actually is the harbor of Chongjin, if I remember correctly, from the intelligence that we were getting before the show. And I believe that this port is a close match. It actually may be a little bit further down. It may be the port of Wonsan, which is down here. And we can't really tell for certain. I'll have to try and make sure that we get the satellite footage geolocated on that again. Or it could be Simpo. And let me make sure to check on Simpo here. So is it Simpo? It might actually be Simpo. We can't tell with absolute certainty, but nevertheless, wait, oh my god, we found it. It's right here. This is it. You see the little outcropping right, oh my lord, that's not it. There's the outcropping right there. It would be close to Simpo or Chongjin, but not necessarily. We will have to try and do further geolocating on this, or, wait man, let me actually check this, because from what I remember, it was Korean in origin. And it certainly could not be the port of Vladivostok. Vladivostok does not have a port profile that is similar to this one. So this is some North Korean port. It's just that we don't know which one, sadly. I tried to geolocate this before the stream. I thought I did a pretty good job, and then I threw it right out of my brain, out the window, and I wasn't able to remember it for the show, because there's been a lot going on before the show that made me completely forget the whole track of everything that was supposed to be going on in that part of the news. But beyond that, we are able to see an additional little clip right here, where we can see that another source, we actually believe that this information was disseminated by South Korea, showing the naval routes that most likely were made by the North Koreans in sending their soldiers in the Korean People's Army to the port of Vladivostok. This is something that is showing that the North Koreans have directly joined the war. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it at this point, but nevertheless, a lot of people do have an unresolved question, and Matthew actually asked this skillfully just a second ago. How in the world are they going to overcome the language barrier? North Koreans generally are not taught foreign languages. That's generally a standard. And I know that many people will say, but the propaganda says they're taught multiple languages. North Korean education, by and large, outside of Pyongyang, is mostly non-existent. And so for that reason, a lot of North Koreans will only have a limited understanding of Korean, and that's it, and specifically the North Korean dialect of Korean. Because over the course of about 70 to 80 years, and also the massive governmental differences in between the North and the South, North Koreans actually have a very distinct and separate dialect of Korean that is completely separate from the South Korean dialect that most people would understand as standard Korean around the world. This means that there really is not an easy way for the Russians to communicate with the North Koreans, even if they actually have Korean translators on location. They most likely are speaking a South Korean or traditional Korean instead of a North Korean dialect. And so that means that there is a considerable issue with commanding these troops on the battlefield with Russian officers. And that means that they need a way to be able to disseminate command at the most highest level and then disseminate that down through the Korean ranks in Korean for these units to operate appropriately. And we have seen that they have already accounted for that, and we already have noticed something that is highly indicating to us that these troops are not being sent as fodder to be put under Russian command. They are going to be operating as an expeditionary force of the Korean People's Army. As a Russian aircraft from the Russian Air Force was spotted today, as this loads really quickly, flying from, well, actually, an IL-62M passenger jet from Pyongyang to Moscow. The IL-62 is largely considered to be a higher-end government transport, and I'll show y'all one of them right here. This is the IL-62, and this is actually a Russian Air Force IL-62, like the one that would have landed in Pyongyang and just taken off a few hours ago and currently still transiting to Moscow. These aircraft are used for VIP transport, specifically high officers, such as generals or any other higher ranks such as that, or maybe even an entire general staff. From what we believe, at least based off of what we're seeing at the moment and the clear problems that would be had with Russian commanders commanding an entirely Korean unit that only speaks largely a North Korean dialect of Korean, we understand that this aircraft most likely was picking up a general staff of Korean officers that will be transiting to Moscow. From Moscow, they will most likely meet with the senior commanders at the Russian Ministry of Defense and also Ministry of Defense officials, where they will then largely get on the same page about the actual combat situation on the ground. And then once those understandings are at least ironed out as best as possible, those North Korean officers will either be transiting by aircraft or most likely by train to the city of Rostov-on-Don to join the Russians' Southern Military District Command headquarters in that area, which is currently the one in charge of the entire Ukraine war, where they will then continue to conduct war objectives, but they will be understanding that while the Koreans are equipped and largely fielded by the Russian Federation, they will be under an expeditionary force sort of a command structure, with North Korean commanders at the very top disseminating orders down to their brigades, and then from the brigades down to whatever other levels exist within the Korean chain of command. And we don't really know how complex, because I haven't been able to research this too much before the show. We do know how the Chinese work, and they work off of a very modular and modern sort of a, I guess you could say, combat structure, with the army being broken down into brigades, and then the brigades being broken down into battalions, which are the most basic fighting element on the battlefield. But we do not know at the moment what the North Koreans are working off of, and I'll have to be studying that a little bit more. The North Koreans may still work off of a regimental system, because during most communist or at least Soviet-inspired military doctrines of the Cold War, the basic unit was not the battalion, it was actually the regiment, and a regiment is made up usually of several battalions, meaning that you have a lot less combat flexibility because your most basic fighting element is the regiment, which is a far bigger element or a far bigger unit than the battalion, making combat planning a lot less flexible. But nevertheless, we do believe that they will be most likely really pretty much operating a complete expeditionary force in Russia. This will be, for the most part, while Russian equipped, a North Korean armed force fighting inside of Ukraine. And this has led a lot of people to have a lot of outrage today. I cannot even begin to tell y'all how much outrage has been seen around the world at this moment from everything that's going on in between the North Koreans and the Russians. We've already begun to hear that the South Koreans have declared an emergency meeting at the highest levels of government to try and figure out how they're going to be dealing with the situation, as Twitter takes a little bit of a while to load, which isn't great. I don't know why it's taking so long to load. The internet is working at literal full speed. And Matthew, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but there's a lot of lag happening, so it might be the internet.
I'd be dipped. How in the world can that be? But anyways, moving on from that, we were able to hear that the South Korean president did call an emergency meeting over the DPRK troop movements into Russia, and Ukraine's foreign minister, Andrei Sybiha, calls on the Euro-Atlantic Committee to act immediately, as the DPRK, together with Russia, are invading Europe, according to the Ukrainian foreign minister. We've even been able to see that as soon as the news actually emerged today, and there was hardcore, solid proof that the North Koreans are joining the Russian Federation in the war in Ukraine, it's no longer a point of rumor, it's no longer a statement from just the Ukrainian government, which we had already reported as fact on this channel that it was existing. We now have verifiable picture and video evidence proof of the matter. And we were able to hear that a statement was actually issued in formal means today by the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee here in the United States Congress. And the statement was fairly interesting. And I would like to make sure that we read this as clearly as possible to give you all at least a little bit of an idea of what the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is stating at the moment, just to make sure that all of us kind of get a little bit of an idea on where the United States government may be going here in the future. And this specific letter was actually addressed to the Office of the President of the United States. And so we'll be reading the letter. Dear Mr. President, according to news reports at the North Atlantic Treaty Organization headquarters yesterday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned, "We know about 10,000 soldiers of North Korea are preparing to start fighting against us. This is a really urgent thing. I spoke about it with the United States. I spoke about it with all the leaders of NATO." Public reports from Ukrainian and South Korean intelligence agencies detail possible movement of North Korean troops on Russian naval vessels this month. The administration has not briefed the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence or the House Armed Services Committee of any assessments by U.S. intelligence agencies or the Department of Defense regarding these troop movements. These troop movements, if true, are alarming and are extreme escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. They require an immediate response from the United States and our NATO allies to avoid a widening conflict. North Korean troops either attacking Ukraine from Russian territory or entering Ukrainian territory must be a red line for the United States and the NATO alliance as a whole. Your administration must make that absolutely clear and unequivocal. Due to the urgency of this matter, I call for an immediate classified briefing of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence concerning the possible engagement of North Korean troops and a potentially escalating and broadening Ukrainian conflict. This is a very serious thing. I cannot put that out there enough. We are seeing that the United States is already starting to murmur within the halls of Congress that this may truly be crossing a red line, and that actual aggressive action must be taken to quell the situation or to crush it entirely before it starts to spiral out of control. But at the same time, we are starting to see that the situation may have spiraled out of control, as we were able to hear another bombshell announcement from the Russian Federation's government in Moscow today. But before we get on into that, I do want to talk really quickly about the situation with North Korea, considering that we now have verifiable proof and evidence that the North Koreans have officially entered the war and will be sending a sizable expeditionary force into Ukraine. A lot of people have talked about this and the proof that they are there, and are starting to speak a lot like the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee within the halls of Congress today, possibly even suggesting that NATO should get involved in the war in Ukraine and try and put this out once and for all. And a lot of people seem to be on the same page that that may actually be the necessary action that must be taken by the United States of America, along with the entirety of the Western sphere, to avoid a further conflict or a even growing of this conflict into a uncontrollable hellscape that could envelop the entirety of Eastern Europe here in the near future. Some others are saying that NATO should probably stay out of this and maybe see how it will just go, or see if things will not be going that badly. Some others are saying that only if Ukraine must have help, meaning that if the situation is irreversible and Ukraine is somehow being defeated by the army of the starving, then they will get help from NATO. And some others are unsure and undecided on this matter at the moment. But nevertheless, this is probably one of the most serious situations that we've seen so far in the war, as this is officially another foreign country, by all necessary measures, joining the war in Ukraine. This has never happened before in the course of 968 days of war, and we are starting to see that this may start to spiral completely out of control if some urgent action is not taken immediately. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this at the moment, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now that we have seen the video evidence showing North Korean soldiers getting geared up by the Russians with equipment to be fighting on the front line, that's very concerning, and it brings up some fears of potentially world war starting as a result of multiple countries jumping in the fight. So do you think NATO should get involved considering that fact? So 56% said yes, NATO must get involved, while 23% said no, NATO should stay out, and 13% said only if Ukraine must have the help should NATO get involved. So once again, once NATO gets involved, I think the floodgates of war are going to open up quite widely. That's my personal opinion. So when NATO finally does have to get involved, we need to understand the consequences of that. While I would love to see NATO going on the ground and take out these enemy forces inside of Ukraine, we have to weigh the pros and the cons. But I would say this. With the multiple countries piling up on Ukraine like North Korea, Iran, and also Russia, currently Ukraine is fighting a multi-pronged war, and that can't be basically ignored by NATO. We have to do something, but the key is, what do we do? Do we simply ramp up support even more, or do we send in troops to help fight them off? That's a big question, but we have to be careful not to start World War III, because that would be quite detrimental, even more than the war in Ukraine even is right now. So I'm actually with the 13%, only if Ukraine must have the help. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the situation we are starting to see is becoming an incredibly serious one. I have to kind of lay it out to all of y'all what we're seeing today and kind of allude to something that we'll be covering here in the news that's already in the title, but we haven't gotten to it yet in the news cycle. We are currently seeing that an actual Axis power is beginning to emerge in this world that is intent on destroying the world that has been constructed for decades now here in the West. We are seeing that the North Koreans are openly joining and supporting the Russians in the war in Ukraine and supporting Russian expansion and imperial ambitions into NATO territory here in the near future, as Putin has made it very clear through a lot of his speeches and also his greater plan for the Russian Federation that their imperial ambitions do expand into the Baltics, and they also expand into eastern Poland as well, clearly threatening the NATO alliance well into the future. We've also been able to understand that the North Koreans are openly threatening the sovereignty of South Korea and are possibly going to be going to blows very soon in an armed conflict within that peninsula against another ally that is an integral member of our eastern sphere of the Western Alliance. We are now also starting to see that Russia, just today, has announced that Iran has ally status. A kind of a statement that starts to completely change the situation in the Middle East, as any actions conducted against the Islamic Republic of Iran could possibly draw the Russians in immediately into the war in Europe, specifically in Ukraine with the rest of NATO, or for that matter, may begin an armed conflict in the Middle East in between the Russian Federation, the United States, or Israel, depending on what parties get involved in that conflict. The world is truly on the very brink of war, and we've been trying to not say that for a while at this point, but given the situation that we are starting to see, things have never been closer to war in the modern age than it is right now. And this starts to demand, why in the world was it allowed to get to this point? We've been saying for years now that the United States was able to act proactively and aggressively in some situations. These sorts of things could have been avoided. The Russians would have never been able to state that today they were an ally with Iran if the United States had truly brow-whipped the Iranians into submission around a year ago. The North Koreans would never be able to be in a situation to threaten the South Koreans if we had a strong enough stance to make them back down or otherwise face complete annihilation and destruction. We would have never seen that these situations have arisen if we were able to act a lot more strongly just a year or 2 years ago than what we're seeing today. And we are now starting to understand that because of the largely weakness or the ineptitude to act, we are now having to be forced to act on a situation that is far grander and far larger than we would have ever imagined at this point. And I would have to say that while this would be an incredibly difficult situation and an incredibly difficult answer to give, whether to sit back and to continue to let this spiral out of control and snowball into an even larger issue, or to be proactive and step forward and try and crush the situation, I would have to say that the best option, while difficult to make that decision, would be to step forward and crush the situation as best as possible. We are going to see that this will continue to go out of control if we do not step in and conduct some sort of serious action at this point. NATO involvement in Ukraine runs a fairly high risk of getting the Russians involved into a larger continental war against the entirety of the NATO alliance. But at this point, we are given almost no other option. We can either decide to do that now and hopefully see that a diplomatic concession can be made where both sides will be unhappy, but nevertheless a complete world war will be avoided, or we can wait to see the Russians, the North Koreans, and whatever allies attempt to join the Russians here in the future continue to slowly steamroll Ukraine and work together to rebuild Russian military abilities for them to be able to try and conduct a full-scale conventional war against NATO, which is clearly an obvious reality at this point within the next decade. I would have to say that while we will understand that war is a horrendous thing, it would be better to step forward and be proactive and to stop the situation before it truly goes out of hand and there is truly no hope of saving the situation around the entire world. And so I would have to stand with the 56% saying that NATO action within Europe is an absolute necessity at this point, and I would also extend that answer to include the Middle East and East Asia as well. Not only for NATO, but specifically the United States of America. American action is required at this point around the world. The Middle East is continuing to devolve out of control. We are now seeing that the Russians are going to get directly involved in stirring the pot within this region and threatening American and Western interests within the Arabian Peninsula. And we are now also seeing that the Chinese and the North Koreans are going to continue their aggressive, coercive, and threatening and highly dangerous actions against the Republic of Korea as well as the Republic of China as well. These things are absolutely unacceptable acceptable. And the United States of America and the Grand Republic and the amazing sphere that we have created over the past 80 years will not be jeopardized due to a freezing of fear that is starting to grip the Western command structures. That is absolutely not a possibility, and we must act at this moment before the situation becomes even worse. That would be my honest opinion on the matter at the moment. Of course, people can be open to disagree, but still at the same time, people I don't really know are truly understanding the gravity of the situation at this moment, seeing that this is now clearly extending into even other areas of the world entirely. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, moving us on into the next major bombshell that we have gotten a statement today that I've already talked about a little bit that is really starting to make things incredibly concerning inside the Middle East. Putin has officially stated today that the Islamic Republic of Iran has allied relations with the Russian Federation. That is a direct quote from Putin today at a press conference. This is another serious situation that is starting to once again create an axis of power that we are going to have to start directly dealing with. At the moment, the axis of power consists of the following members: the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and subsequently its proxy forces in the Middle East, including the Yemeni Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, as well as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also called North Korea. We are currently facing down this axis of power, and it could continue to expand as time goes by. We could see that other members join, and heaven forbid if the People's Republic of China does join, because then we will be seeing that this axis of power will have truly reached its fever pitch and the ability of power and, I guess you could say, military might that it would be able to exude across the entirety of this area of the globe. This is something that also starts to change heavily the situation in the Middle East, as now we are going to see that Israeli officials, as well as American officials, now have to game plan out the Israeli response to the Islamic Republic of Iran with a hypothetical scenario that the Russian Federation may get involved with whatever assets may be available to it at this point to strike against Israel or maybe even American forces in the region if the Israeli attack is to press forward. This now means that we are dealing with a much more fragile situation inside the Middle East, and the Iranians may be able, with this sort of a diplomatic shield from the Russian Federation, to be able to buy themselves enough time to independently produce a nuclear weapon of mass destruction that could be used to largely freeze any hostile actions that could be conducted in retaliation against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So for the large part, this is also an incredibly serious situation as well. Probably one of the most serious situations that we've seen so far in the Middle East, as the Iranians now officially have a somewhat large backer, at least a large nuclear power that is starting to back them officially. And so we're also going to have to figure out how to deal with that one as well. And I see a lot of people in the chat saying all kinds of things about let's see, a lot of people are saying the United States ought to wake up and get to action. Some other people are saying freeze or make it worse. And nevertheless, it's something that I cannot say enough, and it's a very serious thing, and I'm trying to make sure that we press the kind of situation that we're seeing today. This is the most severe diplomatic situation that we've seen so far while covering the news for 3 years now. It has never gotten this bad, and this is truly as bad as it could get. Seeing the North Koreans, the Russians, and the Iranians teaming up together doesn't mean that there's a great deal of military might behind this threat. I want to make that incredibly clear. The United States could take on all three of these countries conventionally and win quite easily. The problem, however, is that the North Koreans and the Russian Federation are nuclear capable, and not only that, are nuclear capable with intercontinental missiles, meaning that any kind of a reaction to them could result in a nuclear exchange, which is generally the worst situation that we could imagine at this point. So going off of that, and considering that in our planning here, and also considering that this nuclear extension now applies to Iran as well, pretty much we are going to have to figure out how to go forward with this against, supposedly, at least in the planning, all three of these possible nuclear powers, or confirmed nuclear powers. And it's just, I don't even really know how in the world we're going to go about this at the moment. This is honestly the worst case scenario that we could see at the moment, especially with how the Middle East is going. The Middle East was salvageable, or at least we could largely quell or fix the situation by conducting hostile actions against Iran rapidly after the October 7th attacks and also after the April attack this year by the Islamic Republic. But now at this point with the Russians openly saying that they're backing them, we really can't do a lot to them unless if we're willing to admit that that will most likely lead to an armed conflict with Russia. And so now we have a really, really serious situation on our hands, and we just I don't really know how in the world we're actually going to go about this thing. And so let me try here and see if I can explain how we could go about this situation, because now we can't really conduct aggressive armed action rapidly against Iran, which was a very easy and open option that we could have taken. Now we have to figure out how to deal with this outside of aggressive military action. Now we have to try and conduct diplomatic actions. This does not mean, however, that the United States is going to concede a position of appeasement or give in to Iranian or Russian demands. That will not be a possible scenario in this situation. If we were to try and deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran, now knowing that the Russians are probably going to militarily back them, we would have to, of course, try and conduct an armed standoff against Iran and most likely the Russian Federation as well. By doing this, we may be able to create a concession with the Russian Federation and Iran. If we were to try and do this, we may possibly be able to see a permanent freeze on the war in Ukraine with the current front lines, or we may even be able to see a concession of most lands in this area back to Ukraine, where the Russian Federation just gives them up and ends the war. We may also be able to try and tell the Iranians to force their proxies into a ceasefire and to release all the hostages that the Hamas forces are still currently holding. But that might not even go forward, as they probably do understand that at this point, they largely have a nuclear shield behind any of their actions, and this will only further promote more aggressive and escalatory actions by all three of these countries. And then we have to deal with the escalatory actions and what we're going to do. And then that largely forces us into a hand where we have to be ready to fight a war with these people, because there's really no other way it could go unless we start conducting appeasement. So that's largely the situation that we have at this moment. And a lot of people have been talking about this at the moment with what's going on in the Middle East. And Israel has asked at the moment, while situations are continuing to worsen and tensions are beginning to rise, for a second THAAD launcher to protect their territory. I want to remind you all that there are only 7 operational THAAD launchers in the entirety of the world, with 2 of them currently deployed into the Middle East, 1 of them deployed in South Korea, 1 of them deployed near the area of Taiwan, and also around 3 additional ones at the moment remaining in the United States within the state of Texas. We do not really know if we can even sacrifice another THAAD at this moment without possibly compromising national security interests here in the United States, as we would be heavily short of THAAD launchers that would be usable and operational here in America. But still, a lot of people seem to be of the belief that, at least for a temporary scenario, we should hand over a second THAAD to the American command that is in Israel at the moment to try and prepare them for the next upcoming Iranian response that may come as due to an Israeli attack and against Iran, and possibly a Russian response that may be directed against the state of Israel as well. And we see a lot of people weighing in on this at the moment. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So on this poll right here, and also there's extreme lag tonight. I have no idea what the hell's going on with that. I've restarted my computer and everything, so it's not on my end. So I'm not sure if it's the Wi-Fi or Andrew's computer, but we'll have to find out later. But anyways, the poll right here says Israel has asked for a second THAAD launcher to protect its territory, and will the attack be massive from Iran? And 54% said yes, Iran will retaliate severely, while 24% said no, Israel just wants a reassurance, and 12% said it seems concerning, but I'm a little bit unsure. And on this one, I think the U.S. might have already granted the request to get the second THAAD launcher, and to me that indicates that Israel is a little bit concerned that their defense systems, like the David Sling and Iron Dome, might be overwhelmed with a massive attack from Iran when they finally do retaliate to Israel's upcoming attack on Iranian territory. So I think Iran will retaliate severely, and once again, when Iran does that, Israel has the option. They can either return fire immediately, or they can wait a few weeks like they've done now to try to keep the tensions a little bit lower than they could be otherwise. So I'm actually with the 53%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would also have to be with the 53%, at least for the temporary time being. We should rapidly deploy an additional THAAD launcher from the United States to the area around Israel to prepare for the upcoming Iranian counter-response to the Israeli attack that will be happening here soon. I believe that is just a necessity at this point. We do know that the attack, well, at least the return from Iran will be incredibly large, and so a THAAD would help out massively. And I've seen some people asking, what is a THAAD? The THAAD, just to show you all this really quickly, is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. These are supposed to be replacing the Patriot system in American service entirely here within the next, at least the remainder of this decade. You can actually see one of them right here conducting a test launch. These systems are incredibly cool. They really are a Patriot on steroids. That's the best way to explain these things. It is air defense at its greatest. There is truly no air defense system in the world that is as competent or as capable as the THAAD system currently is. And this thing is capable of exo-atmospheric interceptions. It is capable of intercepting targets over the horizon, which the Patriot was also capable of conducting as well. It has an insane range. To give you all the publicly listed range, this thing has an operational range of 120 miles. Most Patriot batteries only have a range of 70 to 90 miles. So this is a massive, around 30% increase off of the highest range Patriot batteries that are commonly in service. This thing also has a flight ceiling of 93 miles. To give you all an idea of how high that is, let me show y'all the orbit of the ISS. Orbit of ISS height. And so let me get that here. The ISS orbits at a height of 250 miles above the surface of the Earth. This thing can reach almost half that distance to where the ISS is currently. That is an incredibly high flight ceiling. It literally is exo-atmospheric. The maximum speed of the missile is around Mach 8.2 at its apogee, meaning its top speed. That is not maintained through the entirety of the flight, but that is its top speed, at least according to public statements. It may even be higher. And not only that, these weapons are truly amazing. From what we understand, almost none of them miss their targets, at least beyond the tests. I know a lot of people are going to go, but they fail testing, and they do fail in testing. That's kind of like the point of testing, is to improve them for their actual release. But beyond that, we have been able to see that every single interception beyond that has ever been conducted by the THAAD in testing or in actual practice has succeeded. And that is incredibly amazing. This thing, from what we understand, in actual service, has a 99.7% interception rate, meaning that out of every 1,000 missiles that are fired against the THAAD, or every 1,000 air targets that the THAAD is attempting to intercept, only 3 out of those 1,000 air targets will make it through the THAAD, if there is enough interceptors available. And so this is an incredibly amazing system. We also want to give a shout out once again to the great state of Alabama, as the THAAD is actually, well, the THAAD missiles are actually manufactured here in Troy, Alabama. Once again, Alabama.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, it makes you proud to be an Alabamian knowing that we produce some of the most dangerous and deadliest weapons of war known to man. Like, we produce the Javelin, we produce the HIMARS, we produce the THAADs, well, at least the missiles. We also produce the Patriot pretty much all the way through. It was tested in Redstone Arsenal, and I think the Patriot's missiles are also produced somewhere in Alabama as well. But nevertheless, these things are truly incredible. But beyond that, just to put this out there, it seems as though a lot of people are saying it would be good to send another one over. And I would have to agree. I also think it would be a good idea to send another one of these over. And hopefully, Matthew, the lag issue is fixed. But really quickly, I want everyone to hang tight for just a split second, literally like 5 seconds. The intro card's going to pop up for that time because I got to do something on my screen to see if I can maybe fix the lag a little bit on my end, if it's on my end. So everyone just give me 5 seconds and we will be back on air and continue to run the show as normal. So give me just my end. I don't know if it is or isn't. It says that.
What happened, man? Like, what changed?
I turned off the Wi-Fi and turned it back on because that is always the IT number one, be-all, fix-all. So I'm hoping that that fixes any lag that might be on my end. So Matthew, how am I coming through? Am I coming through clear?
You're coming through really loud and clear now, so I think that actually might have fixed it, believe it or not.
Man, I'm an IT genius. Call me Steve Jobs. I turned off the internet.
Well, man, at least, like, honestly, that's very helpful you did that, because that does isolate the problem. That isolates the problem right there on your Wi-Fi card. So I think we found the source of the problem.
Then that means I'll probably just have to buy a new Wi-Fi card and try and upgrade it if it's not completely, like, built into the computer. Because in case y'all didn't know, I did upgrade my computer a little while ago. We added, like, an additional several terabytes of storage to it, and that was integrated perfectly fine. So we might just have to upgrade the Wi-Fi card, or that won't really matter, because if we can just connect it to Ethernet, then everything will be fine. And everything will be honky-dory from here to now. It'll be like sunshine and lilies forever. But beyond that, Matthew, what are you thinking right now of the situation that we're seeing in the world? Because there's a lot going on, and considering that North Korea, Russia, and Iran pretty much formalized an Axis power arrangement today, what are you thinking about? We haven't really been able to hear a lot of your thoughts on this.
I'll be honest with you. Like, I really don't like fear mongering. Like, that's the one thing when you go around YouTube on the geopolitics channels. I hate when people are like, "Oh, like today's World War III. Oh, tomorrow's World War III, and then the next day after that's World War III." Honestly, I've never bought into that really. But I will say this: if there's any time for an argument that World War III has maybe started or is about to start, it would honestly be right now, because the risk we see with World War starting is more countries jumping into a fight. And when you see North Korea and also Iran and these other countries joining in with Russia to attack one country in Europe, which is Ukraine, which is bordering NATO, the whole alliance in itself, that is the only situation where I could see, like, okay, like World War might actually start with that one. And North Korea, believe it or not, even though they are a very weak country and they have a very poor force, that is a big deal because they are supplying manpower to Russia, and Russia and Ukraine are having manpower issues. And one of the problems that Russia has to solve is where they're going to get more people from and put them in the meat grinder. And it looks like they found a new place, which is North Korea. Kim is willing to sacrifice his people and send them over there to basically get some favor with Putin. So that is not good. Like, honestly, this is looking a bit bad. Hopefully this isn't like one of those moments where we look back in history and we say, whoa, that was the beginning of World War III right there, and we didn't even know it. Like, hopefully that's not the case, but it kind of looks like it.
I would have to agree, and it is and I have to say this just because I have to put out this disclaimer. Fear mongering is a pretty normal practice on YouTube to get views. And I'm sure that many of y'all who have been here for 3 years have known that we've never really been one to fearmonger. We've always been one to really heavily mitigate anything that may be fearmongered on and say that it's not that big of a deal and it's not that big of a concern. Usually it isn't. However, this is the first time that I've ever seen in 3 years where I truly believe that there is a great deal of concern to be had for what we're seeing. And I also just saw Chenanar Fredera say, "You guys are scaring me." And I hate to hear that. And I don't want anyone to be incredibly scared or, sleeping with one eye open tonight. I will tell you this. While things are getting very concerning, it's not at the point that we have to legitimately be scared yet. It's concerning, and people do need to pay attention to this and understand what's going on, but I'm not going to tell y'all to start running around the streets just screaming and throwing, like, TVs through windows and all that kind of stuff and screaming, "Festival! Festival!" Like, I don't think y'all should be doing that yet. That might be coming around the corner, though. But nevertheless, this is a very concerning situation. I want y'all to keep that in mind, because here's something that I want to let y'all know and remind y'all of a little bit. The United States is currently largely on a track to conduct appeasement. That will not change. And I know a lot of people believe that it would change or it won't change or it would actually get worse. But I'm telling y'all 100%, if I was to ever ask y'all to trust me, bro, on anything, it's going to be to trust me, bro, on this one. From what I can tell, the American posturing at the moment is not going to change. We see the House committee, well, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee today was asking for there to be a change and for swift action to be made. But I would have to largely assume and largely believe, based off of historic precedents laid out for about the past 12 years, that we will not be seeing anything like that happening anytime soon. And regardless of how anything goes here in America over the next few weeks, or the next few months for that matter, the United States will most likely still be continuing a path of appeasement or something along those lines, or possibly trying to avoid conflict because no one wants to be that guy who, come around next election cycle, is said that he started a new war. Because in the modern American mindset, the only thing that is truly irreprehensible and terrible is starting a war, even if the war was one that had to be fought or it was actually for a just or good cause. And so,
But Enforcer, we're actually being put into a position right now, because really, if you look at it like from this perspective, my perspective is this. Currently, they're playing chess right now in geopolitics. It's always a game of chess. And right now, North Korea has moved their chess piece and said, we're going to start sending manpower to Russia because they currently have a manpower problem. Both countries are, Ukraine and Russia. Now Russia's found a new source of manpower, so Ukraine has to move their chess piece and say, okay, we found a new source as well, and we're going to fix our manpower problem as well. The catch is, though, where does Ukraine get that manpower from? And really the only place they have to turn to is going to be either mercenaries or, more likely, probably the NATO alliance. Who's going to send troops to Ukraine to help level the playing field? And we're being put in a spot where we might have to actually send the troops from NATO, or otherwise Ukraine's going to be at such a disadvantage that they start losing the war. And that could be a real possibility.
It could be a real possibility, and it's a fairly concerning one. But one thing I will say, and I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to have to get into this one a little bit. I see some people saying, no, I only see the posture not changing for the next 3 weeks because the American election is coming around for the president. And for some reason, when a new president's elected, like the sky opens up and blessings from heaven rain down from above if you like the person who gets elected. Let me tell you all the reality. Like, from what I can see, I'm going to say this. I never have made an appeal like this before, but y'all have seen me and Matthew on this channel for 1,000 days now, nearly, covering this news. We've very rarely been wrong, and our analysis, at least, has usually been right. I would say that it's about been 85 to 90% right. So as far as taking shots in the dark go, in future analysis and predictions, at least in a short term, or at least in a big picture, we haven't done that badly. So if I have to ask y'all to trust me on any one thing, it's going to be this one. Regardless of who gets elected, the situation is not going to change. And I'll explain why. Both sides generally like to say, and I've heard this from both sides, that they are respected and that world leaders don't mess with them. But from everything I've seen in the past, the present, and in what will most likely obviously be the future, things are not going to be changing. They're just simply will not. The United States is pretty adamant on conducting only the bare minimum of actions to support our allies. In the Middle East, in the past, we have seen that that was the case. In Ukraine, we have seen that this has been the case. In East Asia, we have certainly seen that this is the case. Nothing has really changed with the Taiwan situation over 12 years. At all. We have not seen the U.S. posture change. We haven't seen any kind of an increased commitment to Taiwan, regardless of who's been in charge. As President of the United States, we have not really seen a change. At all. Like, I want to make that very clear. At all. We never saw, like, I want to make this clear. I will go through and outline this for everyone. Back in the time from 2008 to 2016, many of y'all are getting the idea of the time I'm talking about. We actually saw that the United States was improving relations with China at the expense of Taiwan. And we were kind of giving a bit of a cold shoulder to Taiwan at the time, a little bit. Although we were still giving them weapons, we weren't really giving them a nice, good, warm seat to come to the United States to have good relationships with us. We, in fact, were honestly supporting Chinese growth at that point economically, as it was rapidly helping out the United States, and we were able to get cheap consumer goods at bulk. We had no problem with the Chinese at that point, and that was completely at the detriment of Western interest in the long term. And then from 2000, let me think here. From 2008 to 2016, that was largely the case. Then from 2016 to 2020, we didn't really see a change in that at all either. While the United States wasn't as friendly or cuddling up to the Chinese like we had been in the 8 years before that, we were certainly not conducting any actions that showed that we openly supported the interests and sovereignty of the island of Taiwan. At all. It was the same status quo kind of a situation. Taiwan was still getting a little bit of a cold shoulder. Even now, from 2021 to 2024, we have seen that this has almost been the exact same. The Taiwan situation, by and large, across the board, and this isn't political because this is an equal condemnation of everyone involved, has been status quo since 2008. It's not changed. And this is not a good situation, and things have to change. We have to start openly, aggressively protecting Taiwan like we did in the 90s, like we did in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. Because from 1960 all the way up till 1990, our defense of Taiwanese sovereignty was pretty open and clear to see. We sent carrier task groups to Taiwan multiple times to protect their sovereignty from Chinese aggressive actions. Not a single time in the past 12 years has that been done in support of Taiwan. We have not seen that the United States has been incredibly adamant on changing the situation in the Koreas. And I can't really get that much into condemnation on this one. It's really hard to change something, especially since North Korea did become a nuclear power about 12 years ago. So this situation has kind of remained status quo, but still there has to be something done to try and mitigate the North Korean threat that we've been seeing this entire time. There has to be a way, and we have to be working towards that instead of just trying to ignore it or really just let the ebb and flow do what it does. And then with Ukraine and the Middle East, we have seen that nothing, in my opinion, has been done to really deal with the situation. The United States, because of our proactiveness and a lot of people's perceived mistake in that proactiveness in the Middle East in the early 2000s, decided that for the rest of all of history, in American history, we have to only be reactive in the Middle East instead of proactive again to try and deal with the situation. that has been a terrible policy. And that is a policy that has expanded for the last 12 years. Over everyone across the board, we've only been reactive, and that is not a good situation to be in. And we have seen that that has only produced the bad situation that we're seeing right now is by being reactive. We didn't deal with Iran. We clearly didn't. We have not dealt with Iran the entire time that we knew they had an ongoing nuclear program, and that has been the fault of a lot of people. Like let me put this out there. Y'all remember back in the day when we started to hear that the Iranians had a nuclear weapons program, and we said, that's not really a good look. They might be creating weapons of mass destruction. And then we had them sign a piece of paper where they said, pinky promise we won't make nuclear weapons. This will only be peaceful. And then we just did nothing about that up until now. Like, that has been the craziest thing to me, because the treaty that was signed didn't mean anything. And Iran was already obstructing at the time inspectors that were coming in and making sure that their nuclear technology was only being used for peaceful means. They were already doing that as soon as the treaty was signed. And then we saw that the next group came in and said that was a bad deal, stripped the treaty up, ripped it up, and then did nothing at all to deal with the situation or fix it, which is a complete failing in its own right a second time. And then now we've seen that currently over the past 4 years, nothing has been done to deal with either of the mess-ups that have been conducted in the past, either creating a pinky promise treaty or ripping up the treaty and then doing nothing to actually try and fix the situation afterwards. So that's been completely bungled. Like, for the past 12 years, this has been screwed up. And so I would have to say this is a horrendous situation. I don't even know how in the world we could deal with it at this point. In the Middle East, in East Asia, with Korea and Taiwan, or with Ukraine for that matter. Because if anyone had been observing the Ukraine war situation, we could have nipped this in the bud before it happened. When Ukraine said they wanted to join NATO, that was the catalyst. A lot of people don't know that, but that's why Russia invaded Ukraine, is because Ukraine said they wanted to join NATO. That's when the Russians started building up forces along the border, and everyone started going, oh, that's kind of weird. That's a weird war game. They've never done that one before, and then they invaded. If we had actually been proactive, and we had seen that back in the day, and we had sent U.S. forces into Ukraine before the war began, that would have started a diplomatic standoff without a war happening. Like, it would have been dangerous, sure, because that's a very dangerous kind of a thing to do, is conduct an armed standoff in between two nuclear powers. But if we had gone in there before the war began, and it actually stood off the Russians, almost like a Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0, we probably could have actually avoided the war in Ukraine entirely. But it required the kind of stepping forward, the kind of aggressive action that people don't want to be blamed for in the future, to do that and to do the right thing and to stop it before it falls apart. And now we are living with the consequences of largely being inept in all three fronts. And now we have to
I think honestly, at this point, like, as bad as this is going to sound, we have to kind of realize the hole that we kind of dug for ourselves at this point, and just realize we're going to have to let happen what's going to happen. There's really no way to stop it at this point. I think the events have been set in motion for something to go down. Hopefully it's not World War III. Hopefully it is something contained within, like, for example, the Middle East, or maybe in Ukraine, or maybe just in Asia. We're really not sure just yet, but something is coming down the line. And right now, considering the fact that we really can't stop it, all we can really say is, okay, we know what's going to happen, we're prepared for all the contingencies, and we can handle it if it comes up. That's pretty much all we can do at this point. There's no way to, start blaming or going back and saying, oh, like, they did this and that's what led to this. At this point, it's more wise to simply move on from that and realize it is what it is, and how we're going to deal with it moving forward. Because I do understand, like, ultimately, we can look back after it's all over and say, okay, we know for a fact what led to this. It was the appeasement policy of X, Y, and Z, and that's what led to it. But right now, with the situation being so tense and so volatile, we have to really, like, put all of our focus on moving forward and how we're going to deal with the upcoming crisis, basically.
And I would agree with that, and largely from what I'm trying to explain here by saying that no one's changed anything, and I see some people missing the forest for the trees here. I'm not saying that it has been a failure. Let me make this very clear. I'll just say names here. I'm not saying that this is a failure because of the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm saying that this is a collective failure by all of them. That's quite obvious. If you've looked at the past 12 years, no one has done anything to actually fix these situations. Either they have tried to fix it and it was a half fix, or a boilerplate fix that didn't really fix the actual issue, and then the next group only just pushed it on, hopefully for it to blow up on someone else, and then maybe blame them for it. And that has been what's been going on for 12 years now, and we're now seeing that the end result of this is an absolute failure in all directions. At least on the diplomatic level, things are not going well. That's the honest truth. Like, I know a lot of people don't want to hear the truth on that, because a lot of people want to think that the side they believe in has actually done good, or they're going to fix everything. And, you know, maybe they will or maybe they won't, but at least the past 12 years has shown that neither of them has really fixed anything. And I would assume that regardless of who ends up being in charge for the next 4 years, they might not fix any of these situations if they continue to go with the tried and true formula of what they've been doing for 12 years. That is the honest truth, in my opinion. So now we have to know that the tried and true formula that both sides have been doing for 12 years now does not work. They need to come up with a new one. Like, we have to play the cards we're dealt with now. We can't go into whataboutisms and say, what if we did something in the past? We didn't. We have ended up with a collective failure here. I would say it's a critical failure on all diplomatic levels, on all fronts, and we now have to deal with that as it is here right in front of us. So we now need to know that the stance needs to change from one of largely trying to conduct appeasement or something like that. We need to move into an aggressive posturing right now. We can try and salvage this situation. It's going to be really tough, but we can try and salvage it the best we can. If we sit back and continue to do what we've been doing, like we have been doing for 3 years now that we've been covering this, it's only going to get worse. We are going to be forced to deal with this at some point. Like, that's something that some people aren't getting here, and I'm seeing some people say, but what about a war? We are going to war at this point. I believe that that is a certainty. So we can either try and deal with it now, and hopefully maybe even see avoiding a war if we try and deal with it right now, or we will be forced into this later. You pick your poison.
You know, the good news is, though, even though they're not talking about it a whole bunch in public, because it's not really publicized a whole bunch, the European alliances such as NATO, they are preparing for that contingency to happen. For example, Russia to go to a direct war with the entire NATO alliance. They are preparing for that. Also, the U.S. is preparing for that contingency as well. Now, that doesn't make it any better that that's going to happen, but at least we are preparing. I will say this, though. We are a little bit behind the 8 ball because we have started a little bit late. All the generals have admitted that already. We're going to need some more time, maybe a year or two longer, to be able to properly build up our stockpiles and surpluses to actually be able to fight the war properly without having shortages of equipment. But we are getting prepared. So they don't talk about a whole bunch because I'm sure they don't want to fearmonger either, but we are getting ready for that in the background. I'm sure the preparations are probably even more than we're even aware of.
I would have to agree. Hopefully it is, but there is some things that we can do, at least here on the home front in America. The other European countries will have to sort that situation out themselves, but there are some things that we can do here on the home front to help out our situation a little bit. One of the first things that we need to do is we need to start ramping up war production immediately. That is a top priority at the moment. The United States government needs to abandon largely everything except for infrastructure and I guess you could say war production concerns. Those are the only concerns that the U.S. government needs to have for the next few years, because it is quite obvious at this point we are on a path to war. Whether people like it or not, it's going to be happening here in the future. And we need to be in such a good position that to fight that war, that the war will not be fought. Like, the end goal is not to fight a war. The end goal is to be so ready for that war that no one else wants to fight it against us. That would be the goal. And so the U.S. government needs to start focusing on that immediately. We also need to start focusing on doing whatever necessary to start increasing recruitment quotas once more. Recruitment quotas have not been met here for a little while here in America. We need to do whatever is possible, whatever is necessary to start getting recruitment quotas met again, to be able to keep up force readiness at least in the meantime, and also to possibly expand the amount of staff or the amount of personnel that are in the Department of Defense and the armed forces as a whole. I would also say that the United States needs to start structuring contingency plans and wargaming out possible scenarios around the world where flashpoints may begin. Those would obviously be the Korean Peninsula, Taiwan, the Middle East, or Eastern Europe. All of that needs to be wargamed out, and we need to figure out plans, contingency plans, and additional contingency plans to the contingency plans on what we will be doing when that begins. We need to start contacting all of the European members of NATO, and we also need to be contacting all of the Western sphere members in East Asia to start figuring out what exactly is going to be happening, how supply lines will be ensured, and to also figure out proper maritime convoy procedures, as those will become an inevitability. And we also need to figure out how air defense will be structured and containment will be conducted, at least in the area of East Asia, around the East China Sea and the South China Sea, to contain the Koreans and the Chinese. We need to also be racing to figure out how can we avoid turning this into a nuclear onslaught. If the war was to happen, we need to have some diplomatic actions, emergency ones that can be taken to completely avoid a nuclear war. Because I have to remind everyone, while we are saying that war is inevitable at this point, we do not want to see a nuclear war happen. Like, we have to play the cards we're dealt, but one of those cards is a nuclear war. And I don't think anyone wants to actually play that card. I obviously don't. I would like to live. I know that I would probably get killed in the nuclear blast. We are actually in the blast radius of a Russian nuke. If it was fired here in Alabama, it would hit Birmingham. And I believe we're in the thermal blast radius of it, so we would be killed pretty much instantly. So I would largely like to avoid a nuclear war.
Hey, hit me.
hit me. But beyond that, we need to figure out how to mitigate that. We need to figure out if the war actually starts going so badly for the other side, we need to give them a way out before they have to go down a nuclear option. Because they will start to take that nuclear option if we start to curb stomp them horrifically. So we need to give them a way out. It might not be, it will not, we certainly will not be fighting for total victory. That just can't be a possibility. They will use nukes because no one's going to accept a total defeat in the modern age. So there has to be a way out for these people, but it has to be one that allows them to exit with dignity, but it also ensures that we still get at least a decent amount of what we were wanting to maintain. Because we're not looking to gain anything, we're really looking just to maintain what we're having at the moment. So these are all of the things that the United States of America, in my opinion alone, needs to do at least in the next 5 years to prepare for what's coming around the corner. Hopefully all these preparations will just be a precaution and will be for naught, and this will never happen. But at the same time, we need to be ready. It would be worse to be caught with our pants down and to be caught by complete surprise by this instead of being prepared for it. We must be prepared by all means necessary. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're actually going to be moving on into Ukraine itself and covering all of the news that has happened there today, because today has been a wildly active day on the front lines, pretty much all the way from Kursk down into the area around Pokrovsk. But still, a lot of people have been talking about the North Korean claims to have recovered a South Korean drone in Pyongyang. This is something that is also starting to kick off in Korea as well. And while I didn't put this down as a news bulletin, we did hear that apparently the propaganda leaflet drone that may have been flying around Pyongyang actually ended up crashing or was shot down, and they've started to recover the debris to confirm that it is a South Korean drone. And they are now starting to make war threats at the moment. And a lot of people are starting to put in their thoughts on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so North Korea is out there running around. They're taking pictures of the drone and they're freaking out about it. They said a South Korean drone, which was dropping propaganda leaflets, apparently went meow and crashed in Pyongyang, pow, right in the middle of it. So they're very upset by that and they're making war threats once again, but they did not go as far as to say this means war right now. They said if it happens again, we might go to war. So they're not quite ready just yet, but 49% said it's a false flag to start a war eventually, while 27% said it's likely real but overblown, and 16% said I need more intel on it first. And I'm actually with the 27%. It is probably likely real. I think the South Koreans were indeed flying a drone around Pyongyang, trying to inform the citizens there of how bad they're living. But apparently the North Koreans really don't like that. So I would say it's real, but it is of course overblown. The North Koreans are trying to turn this into something much larger than it really is, like usual. So Kim Jong-un can keep eating his Twinkies and keep being happy. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, it probably is a false flag to justify some sort of fires being conducted on the Korean border, which means, enemy action. That's the technical term for it, or at least enemy fire action. It's just called fires. But beyond that, I would say it probably is a false flag to start some sort of a conflict or a border skirmish with the Koreans on the southern side. So that would be my opinion at the moment. Still not a good situation, but it's largely starting to turn out that that may be the way it goes. But moving on from the Korean Peninsula and on back towards Ukraine, we do have a load of news to cover here. But before we get into it, and before we start covering every single thing that's going on in this direction, we do have a couple of questions that have been thrown in tonight. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first question here is going to go to Sobi, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Sobi, for that $50 support. That's the largest super chat of the night, and we appreciate it very much. And Sobi says, super chat, so the Enforcer can move his computer to LAN cable.
Hey, And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Sob or Sobi. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running and supporting it and helping it to be possible. Folks like you help this channel to keep on running, and I gotta apologize once again, everyone, for the little bit of lag issues that we're dealing with. Not really on the stream side. The stream is actually run without fault the entire time. It is a Discord call issue or something along those lines that's still going on. So we are going to try and fix that. Sadly, I've got to apologize. We were supposed to fix that today, but things going on in the background have pretty much paused everything for today, which has been a great delight to Matthew and me. But beyond that, we are going to be working on fixing that hopefully tomorrow. So hopefully tomorrow we have a alternative to Discord that we can use so that way the call comes through clearly and we don't have problems like this anymore, because I think that is the main priority or the main issue of the problems that we're facing at the moment. But beyond that, we will also be hooking this thing up to Ethernet as well, because I'll tell you all this. Obviously, Ethernet is better. There's no doubt about that. Wi-Fi is not as good as Ethernet, so we will be making sure to get the Ethernet cable hooked up so that way we are running at 100% efficiency from this point forward. I've got to thank everyone for bearing with it in the meantime, because it's been about as annoying to us as it has been to y'all with the technical issues. But still, 10.3 thousand people have been here tonight at the peak. There's still 8.6 thousand of y'all here right now, and I got to thank all of y'all for bearing with it and still being here to listen to the news, because we certainly have a lot going on tonight, no doubt about it. And so a huge thanks to you once again, Sob, and thank you for supporting the channel, because we have heard tonight from some people like Gunfox61 that there is an issue with throwing in super chats tonight. Some people are not able to throw them in, but beyond that, it still is greatly appreciated any support that we get to keep this channel running. And most importantly, the super chats are very important for helping us to be able to do this as a job and keep this thing rolling, but we will still run this thing hell or high water. Whether YouTube is making it easy for people to throw in super chats or hardly anyone can throw them in, we will keep this channel running every single day. So many of y'all, almost 300,000 people now, count on this channel to be a daily news channel, and count on us to be able to tell y'all the major details and information of what's going on around the world each and every day. We cannot tell y'all how coveted and honored that position is to Matthew and me, and hell nor high water, no matter what is going on or what is happening, we will make sure to keep the news going to y'all each and every single day. Sometimes, at least behind the scenes, it almost seems like the world or specific people are always trying to work against that or goal or that objective of keeping our news going on each and every day. But we are always continuing to fight the fight and largely the struggle to keep this stream on air every single day, 6 days a week, literally endlessly at the same time every single night to tell you all the news. Nothing will ever stop us from achieving that every single day. And while things have stopped us a little bit in the past, we are committed to making sure that that will never happen again unless if it's well planned in advance and something that was a deliberate action of the channel. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for the support, especially you, Sob, and helping this channel to keep on running and bearing with us while we've been trying to make sure to keep the channel running and the technical difficulties that we've had in the meantime with Enforcer Studio 2.0. But a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Shadow Skill 54, who puts in a $25 donation. Thank you very much, Shadow Skill, for that very generous support as well. They said, how many countries have sent troops to support Russia in Ukraine? And also, who do you think would be the first to send troops to help Ukraine? And when do you think that might happen?
That's a very interesting question. There's only been one country that supported Russia with troops, and that's North Korea. Belarus may have supplied equipment to the Russian Federation, but we've never gotten proof of them sending troops. So for the large part, we understand that Belarus is not involved in the personnel side of things. North Korea is the only country that is at this point, and the only country that is involved both materially in terms of weapons and people involved in the war at this point. So that is the only one, actually, interesting. It's not really an exhaustive list. But as far as someone joining the war in Ukraine on Ukraine's side, we don't really know who it would be. There are a couple of options at the moment. We do believe that the French and the Polish would really be the forefront vanguard of the first that would go in if anything was to happen. Emmanuel Macron has made that incredibly clear in France, as well as Andrzej Duda in Poland has made that fairly clear that they are most likely planning on conducting some sort of armed intervention in the future if things were to go very south against Ukraine's best wishes. So that's largely what we understand at the moment. Other countries, we haven't really been able to get the temperature on them with that well. We would assume that America probably isn't going to be getting involved that aptly, that quickly. Neither will the United Kingdom or Germany, which would kind of be our other options. They would probably go in after France or Poland, most likely. Pretty interesting time in history, considering that the Polish and the French would be leading the charge. It's almost like we return back to like the 16th century or something like that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and asking such an interesting question, because this is a really big deal. I mean, we're actually starting to talk about other members, well, not other member states, but other national actors joining the war in Ukraine. North Korea has now made it official today. They are the third group in the Ukraine war. It was the Ukrainians, the Russians, and now the North Koreans. And now we're seeing that other people might join here in the future as well on either side. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting into the rest of the news.
All right, and this one is going to go to none other than Andy L., who's a longtime channel legend, of course. It goes without saying, and Andy put in a very generous $50 donation. Huge shout to you, Andy, as always, for supporting the channel, and also very good to see you once again. And he said, towards your new cable, long live the LSA, and good night, gentlemen.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support for the new cable fund, and hopefully we'll be getting that new cable in here soon. I don't really know if we can. We believe that this little room may not actually have like a Cat 5 kind of a cable thing in it. Cat 7 would be great, but I think we only have Cat 5 in here.
Cat 6 is, I think, the newest, by the way.
Oh, well, someone said Cat 7.
Yeah.
Oh, someone said Cat 7 in the chat.
Hell, if that's out there. I've never heard of it. We have Cat 6, though, in here. I see it on the wall.
Oh, sweet. Good, good. Then we have the best. The best, Jerry. The best. And we will hopefully be getting that plugged in here soon. I hope and pray, because we don't want y'all to deal with technical issues anymore. It's as aggravating to y'all as it certainly is to us. We cannot tell y'all how aggravating that is. Like, that is, like, if y'all ever think we just have technical difficulties like that and we're just fine with it, I can promise y'all we aren't, because as soon as the stream ends every single night and we mute our mics, I am usually cussing like a sailor about the internet issues, because it is just that annoying to Matthew and me. We try and keep a poker face the best we can on air about it, but it truly does bother the hell out of us with the internet issues, because we know that not only does it make our job a lot more difficult, it really does. It makes y'all's time watching a lot more difficult as well, especially whenever the lag hits the actual stream. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Andy L, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I've got to thank you so much once again for saying long live the LSA, because the LSA will never die. The LSA will never truly die. And I got to thank you so much, incredibly well, once again, for the support. And of course, good night to you, Andy L, and I hope you have a great night's rest and are here again tomorrow. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from the question segment and on into the Ukraine war news. Moving on up into the Kursk Oblast today, we were able to see that the Russians were continuing to conduct offensive actions against the Ukrainians in this area, and they're once again meeting a pretty decent amount of resistance and some fairly high losses. Here is our first clip. And we can see the drone coming in. It's coming in a little bit closer, and oh, got him.
Oh, damn.
Oh, we got a dirt bike here.
Oh, look at him.
Bam.
He's like a Great Escape movie. He's like on that little BMW motorcycle. You know, when they ran off from that little place and they're like, "Row, row, row, row."
And then they said, there will be no more escape for you insofar. or something like that. But anyways, 3 weeks cooler. But we can see the dirt bike burning on the side of the street. I guess you can say that thing ain't the cooler. And we can now see it's burnt to a crisp.
Oh, man, forget 3 weeks in the cooler, 3 weeks in the hot box.
Oh, man, forget 3 weeks in the hot box. Talk about 3 weeks of losses. Boom, there goes another 100.
Oh, man, I'm going to have to take an L. Let me take 2.
I'll take 20. There's something like that.
Are these L's free? I'll take 20.
These L's are rated E for wait a minute. No, these L's are rated M for me or something like that.
I just wish the L's were here for me.
And then he acts like he catches a giant dub because Twitter allows him to see our account, although we blocked him. It's like, do we really care? It's like, no. It's like, in fact, it'd be even better if we knew you could actually see the roasts we make sometimes. I think that's gold. So please, by all means, look at the Twitter. Like, we don't care. Aw, man, but I really got that big L. I got that big dub by looking at it. Aw, man. Now I get to see them roast me up front and personal. Dude,
Also, can you send me the picture working at Crystals when you finally get the job? Oh man,
man,
I might come by and order a triple.
Man, he's the kind of guy where he goes, what did you say? I bet you wouldn't say it to my face. And then when you say it to his face, he's like, well, damn, they weren't supposed to do that. Like, he's that kind of a guy.
Oh man, they're bullying me.
And then he goes from they're absolutely irrelevant to help me, a giant YouTube channel is bullying me. It's like, come on, man, make the narrative similar at least. He's so creep, I'm so brat. It's like, come up with something original. And then another hit piece. It's like, please, like another one would be nice.
Another one. He listened to way too much DJ Khaled.
We the best. DJ Khaled.
Man, DJ Khaled was talking about himself, though. Hot Dog Man thought he was talking about the people who were listening. No, he's talking about himself, man. He said, Hot Dog Man is not the best. He's the worst.
Oh, man. And also the chat's going off on him, man. But still, these drones are just messing around. Is that a Toyota? We couldn't see the logo, sadly. I think it's a Toyota, though.
Man, we're going to get the Hot Dog Man allotted for all the lot of L's he's taking.
Dude, they're going to make a brand new lotta called A Hole, so that way you can say it's a whole lotta. Like a whole lotta.
The lotta L, like the lotta long.
Man, they're gonna call it the Lotta L Fat, or something like that. But anyways,
man, that's like a sport package. That's a Lotta L Fat.
Man, and it's fat spelled PH instead of F, or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that, we got to see the 95th attacking and hitting some Russian forces up here as well. Music ensues, and oh man, they just slammed that BTR right there. Rip.
Oh, he's traveling at high speed. Oh,
man, and that tire's really traveling
look
through
at
that
wheel. Man, you know that thing's got to be like a minute.
Oh my God, it flipped. Did you see that? Like, I don't know if you lagged out right there or not, Matthew, but look at this, dude. The whole thing flipped.
Man,
oh my God!
It hit so hard I lagged out.
Man. These mines must be from Iraq. The way they bagged that ass up. Damn. But look at this, dude. It hits the mine, and right there, that's the hull of the APC flipping through the air. That was crazy, man. I have never seen that.
That was crazy.
And you see another BTR getting blown up out there in the distance. And another.
You know, unfortunately, this is like good for like, you know, like when you learn at school, like use context clues to figure out the meaning. I'm doing that to the max right now as I hear every other 3 words you're saying, and then it's like fill in the blanks for the rest. Oh dear.
Dude, I hate that, man. I really do hate that. Because I'll bet you, man, on the stream, it's like our voices are coming through clearer, or at least mine is. Let's test it. And another.
You know, unfortunately, this is like good for like, you know, like when you learn at school, like use context clues to figure out the meaning. I'm doing that to the max right now as I hear every other 3 words you're saying, and then it's like fill in the blanks for the rest. Oh dear.
Dude,
that's crazy, man. How's it coming through on the stream clear like that, but it's not coming through like anywhere else?
Oh, that whole thing came through clear a second ago from you. But you're saying you're only hearing every one of my 3 words, and I'm like, man, like that's not how it is probably on the stream end, and it wasn't. We were coming through largely okay. So, you know, like I don't know. Anyways, but we also got to see this Ukrainian tank blow up this Russian BTR in the middle of a field. Check this one out. Oh, what douche in a second. And skadoosh. And there we go. They blew it up. I'm gonna blow up and then act like I don't know nobody. Or something like that. But we can
was that a song?
No, it's some guy who's got like shark teeth and he had this like weird baseball hat on in this meme. Like I would have to, it's a very obscure meme. I would have to go pull it up or something like that.
Also, by the way, at Real Hot Dog Man, this is not the real Hot Dog Man, by the way. This guy's way too civil and collected to be the Hot Dog Man. He said, "Can you ask the enforcer if you just came up with Baghdad ass?" Oh, no, we did not come up with that. That was some meme or something floating around for a long time, like 6 months to a year ago. It was some guy who does like comedy or something like that, was making memes about a former president. He said, "Oh, these hoes must be from Iraq, the way they Baghdad us up. Damn."
1 second. Let me see if I can find it, man. Dang, I think they took it off. Oh my lord.
Oh, don't pull that up, man. It's got foul language in it. It's got very foul language in it.
Man, I wish we could find it though, man. Just that one little clip. But it was the funniest thing. We quote that a lot here in this house. We go, "These hoes must be from Iraq," like or something like that. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. We didn't come up with that joke. That's not an original joke from us. That's from someone else. We just love it and it's hilarious. But moving on from that and into the location unknowns out of the Kursk area, we were able to see a decent amount of footage down here, such as mechanics of the 148th Separate Artillery Brigade hard at work. And look at them working hard. Or hardly working. That's the thing you have to decide. But I think these folks are working hard, honestly, because the 148th is still out there doing some good work. But moving on from that, we also get to see brand new Russian loaves straight out of the oven. Look at them.
Fresh loaves. Look at that. Fresh loaves with a whole net around it. You would think that the Russians at this point could make a vehicle that probably looks like it's maybe from the 2000s at least, and not the 1950s, but they're struggling to do that.
They struggle. They really do. And then they put a nice water bucket and an air conditioner on top of the cope cage. That's actually an EW system, by the way, an electronic warfare system. But it looks like water buckets and an AC to me. But still, these things are horrendous nevertheless. Moving on from that, we also got to see a Ukrainian Mi-8 attempting to conduct a Twilight Zone movie kind of an incident right here. And here's the slow-mo of that here in a second. Right there. That's how close it was to the ground. There was no slow-mo. So here it is again in real speed. That was pretty fast. Like, Zoink Scoop, I think they're going to get us. Real raggy. But anyways, moving on from that clip.
Man, they're putting the chopper in helicopter.
Man, they about to use that thing like Fruit Ninja, man. I'm telling you. But we also got to see something really cool today. Matthew actually put this on Twitter, and I thought it was really neat too. They got M14s in Ukraine. What do you know?
Man, look at that. And it looks like they got the maybe the Magpul Mo stock maybe on the back or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact name of it, but it kind of looks like it. They got some nice rail guards in the front. I can't tell what optic that is, but man, this thing's pretty sick.
Man, this thing is pretty nice. Some people like to call this the Mark 14 Mod 1 EBR, which stands for Enhanced Battle Rifle, but I know what this thing is, and all of y'all know what this thing is. It's an M14 that's been bubbled up, really. Like, that's how I look at these things, honestly. Like, I don't know, some people are going to say, but Enforcer, it's not bubbled up. It's a new and improved M14. I don't care. To me, these things are literally M14s. Like, they may as well just be, like, all plasticed up, like, Barbied up M14s. That's really what they are to me. And someone said, "Is that a box cartridge?" Yes, and that's what makes it an M14 to me, because internally and mechanically, from what I know, everything on this gun literally works just like an M14. It is an M14. Now, let me show y'all the M14. This is the M14. So this is what's under all of that nice plastic furniture is this. Like, the wood stock's gone, they replaced the stock and everything, but it's got the same magazine, it's got the same trigger and trigger well, it's got the same mechanism, it's got the same, like, I forgot what this thing is called. It's some sort of a actuated gas piston, I think. I don't really know the exact name of it off the top of my head, but it's literally identical. Everything about it is the same. The only thing is that they added a whole bunch of plastic furniture to it and a Picatinny to put a scope on. So, you know, to me, these things are M14s. But anyways, with that, I hope y'all enjoyed taking a look at that for a moment. And moving on to our next little clip, we also got the Russian casualty report, and boy, was it juicy.
Oh man, they got exactly 2 Bobcat skid steers, just 2. I mean, that's not crazy big, but I mean, we can work with that. Also, by the way, I saw a Bobcat yesterday on the side of the street. I was walking past it, and I was thinking, I could get into that Bobcat and take it for a drive real quick. I had to hold myself back because I was like, I can't do that because the fellow that actually owned it was like standing right next to it. But I was like, I need to take that for a drive, man. I've never actually driven a Bobcat in like 10 years. I might have to do that and like take a video.
Man, that would be actually pretty cool. Maybe we could ask them if you could just drive it around a little bit so we can film it. Although that would probably honestly
Yeah,
like,
obviously with permission, by the way. I'm not saying steal the Bobcat. Like, just make that clear.
yeah, of course we wouldn't do that. That would be crazy. But you know, still that would be pretty cool. But moving on from that, we were able to see that 1,530 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. And just to put this out there, y'all, that is the second highest casualty report ever put out for the infantry. That is wildly high. And thank you, Miss Disa, for pointing that out, by the way, because that was an incredible thing that you came out with a book of records today to let us know that that was almost record-breaking today. It's literally second, but no one remembers second. But moving on from that, 51 APCs were also lost, along with 93 supply trucks, 13 main battle tanks, 23 artillery pieces, 48 drones, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, the losses were incredible. And we love to see him. We really do. And hopefully they continue to stay this high. Aw, man, did someone say hi? Shut up, hot dog man. Moving on from that and into Vovchansk, we also got to see the Russians getting hit in this area by the 3rd Brigade. We can see that they're lining them up for a nice little bombing run. And they got them. And here comes another one. And they got the BTR, and they're about to get another one. And then they're going to actually send this one through the crew door. I don't know if that one went down right before the crew door. This one went in the trench. This one's just flying through the trees. Oh, hitting a Russian while he's sleeping on the job. Unfortunate for him. And another one. And another one. Gee, folks, there's a lot of Russians sleeping on the job these days. Someone needs to get out there with an Amazon manager and tell them that they're going to start losing employee points if they keep sitting around like that.
Man, they might just punish them by not letting them go pee.
They might tell them that they're going to remove the bottle that they piss in and just let them piss their pants. But we can see them getting hit here as well. And that's the end of the clip. But man, is the 3rd Brigade putting in work. Moving on from that and into our next clip around the area of Vovchansk, we also get to see some fighting within the local aggregate plant today by the Ukrainians' Russian Volunteer Corps. Pop one off. Put in reverse, Terry. Prank him, John. And they pranked him.
They call that man Popov.
Man.
Damn, there's like some kind of loud ass thing going down the street in front of this place, man. It was loud.
I'm telling you what, man.
It went meow. As the Bobcat police, they said, "Oh, sound like enforcement match on still a Bobcat. We're pulling up."
Man, that's hilarious, man. That's funny, man. Oh, they're just slamming them out there, man. And another one. They just keep going for it.
Someone said, "Stop saying World War III." Well, what would you prefer we call it? I mean, what would you prefer? Let us know.
We're going to call it the War of the World. We're going to call it that just for you,
We'll call it
buddy.
Star Wars. Oh.
Bum, 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 bum. And the Disney cease and desist lawyers are already here, and I literally just did it with my mouth. But here's the clip, the next one that we have of counteroffensive actions in the Vovchansk area. And we're going to be muting that, but we can see them hopping on out of the pickup. Have you ever wanted to get to war in a classy but also menacing way? Then you, my friend, need a pickup truck. Pickup trucks are the most versatile and useful sort of automobile in the world today. Travel around the world on the luxury of your giant pickup truck. Run over entire tanks with your pickup truck because of how big and heavy they are. Ultimate Chad-like. Make sure to sit there and look like that Wes Westerson fella, and look like you're an absolute failing Chad. Really impressive stuff. Talk about your Bugatti that you rented. Talk about living in a rented apartment. Talk about all that.
What call it as your Bugatti?
No, man, I ran into some guy like that today on YouTube. He's the guy like that's all tatted up with a beard. That is always like, "What the hell, dude?" You know, like he's talking like that all the time. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay, that took like an hour to come back to me. I was like, dang, man. But Beyond that, I ran into that guy today, man, and I watched some of his stuff. Oh my goodness, dude. I can't believe that people actually listen to this stuff unironically are like, yes, this guy's got it going on. It's like, this guy seems emotionally unhinged and very immature to me. Like, I don't know if anyone else sees it that way. But that's the way I see it, you know? Like, I'll be honest with y'all. Here's my hot take. Chads are man children. Like, that's my take. They don't have, like, any of the qualities of what I would say is like a real man. They just are assholes, and then they disguise that by saying they're real men. But like, real men aren't assholes, you know. Like that seems to be kind of like a given to me. But moving on from that, now the Vovchansk area and down into the Kupiansk direction, we were able to see some footage of some localized counterattacks in this area by the Ukrainians as well. This footage is a little lengthy, but it is still interesting nonetheless.
Заходим! Пішли! Прикривай!
We see them laying down
Wow, that
heat.
guy was shooting like right behind the other guy's head, man. That was close.
Yeah.
Ёбаный твой рот, сука! Засовывайся нахуй, мразь!
Блядь.
We see him loading up that machine gun. He's about to start laying down that grease.
Damn, this guy is crazy, like shooting around the comrades like that.
He really is, man, honestly.
Що там цілий? Ти цілий? А, я нога ранена. Братан, 300! Ти 300? Ховайся, блядь, ну укриття зроби! Тихо. Там кто-то есть. Whoa!
Hey, man, he spoke English for a minute on that one.
Заебал. Я сейчас просто пойду там все распизду. Штурман! В ногу, блядь, легкий! Що? Рух до мосту, до групи подойди, я тут крию цей сектор! Крию! Така! Давай просувайся в порядку! Давай, так! Цинкуйте небо, блядь! Где-то сзади над нами. Сбив? На, блядь! Где нахуй? Куда, сука?
Oh,
Все целы?
round landed really close near the guy.
Да!
We see this guy prepping a nade. We see the nade going off right in front of him.
Не знаю. Что-то уебало в руку.
Oh, did that guy just see fire from the right?
Я чувствую
I don't know.
ярить по спине.
It sure did look like it.
Сука. Похуй. Сосать!
We see the machine gunner setting up in a trench
Я
line here
ебу.
as artillery is continuing to come down around him.
Там пека.
Зівус прийняв! Це наш кулеметник зліво. А, лівий фланг, робота, кулемет!
Oh!
Все целы!
We now see the machine gunner laying down some quick suppressing fire as another mortar round pretty much comes down in the same spot.
Граната! Крейн, стой!
Підер там!
Пидор! Пидор, гранату кинул! Заебал нахуй! Заткни ебало, блядь! Хе. Класс, блядь! Контрольный спуск, нахуй! Кройте, блядь, пока я буду тут хуйней маяться. Где их?
We see one of our cameramen getting up here. We believe he's wounded at this point. We see some medics dealing with the other wounded.
Може є магазини на... Подожди. На, тобі АК-12.
You see one Russian is sleeping on the job.
А, сука, нахуй, ти шо, гандон? Та ще живий сучара був.
And you see them now showing the firefight from a drone view above as the machine gunner continues to lay down fire.
Детройт, я мутний, викурюємо їх. Щас РПГ в'їбем туди. РПГ, да? Плюс. Сюда, блядь! Сюда бігом на! Бігом нахуй упав, блядь! Упав нахуй! У вас оружия нет, вы потом ебашило
We
нахуй.
see some Russian prisoners here on the ground.
Назад руки, блядь! Руки на...
Кто застрелился?
Я говорю, давайте выйдем нахуй. Старшему сказал, блядь, он говорит, нас не выпустят. Я говорю, есть шанс, то, что выпустят. Мы, говорю, мы же не хотели воевать, блядь.
Детройт, я мутный, я можу все розказати. Братан, ти медик, да? Замотай, пожалуйста, його. Блядь, він хоч і підер, но мені його трошки жалко. Нахуй. Замотай. Подивись, що у нього. Сука, ми пацани, ми, сука, блядь, не звері, нахуй, понимаешь? Ми не звері, блядь. Мотани його, пожалуйста, мотани. Вон у нього аптечка у нього є, мотани його. Вас тупо на нас кидають, пацани.
Thank you.
Ви
We did
розумієте,
know
що вас на
that.
нас кидають?
We now see them evacuating the prisoners.
Я Томич. Починаємо рух до тебе.
So moving along. Another Russian was laying down on the street.
Живий! От йому перед їбалом вона точно впала.
Що підери йдуть по головній дорозі, хай зустрічають, будуть готові зустрічати контакт.
Перекривайте друг друга, блядь, щоб вам не насуярили, блядь, спину.
Dude, did someone legitimately, unironically come in here and go, is this Japanese yarn? It's like, what the hell do you think it is? Like, it's like, no. This is war.
Зараз ми чистимо той.
Yeah, what a goof.
Ото, да? Ото, да. Прильот був, блядь, нереагірований.
Граната!
You hear one of them yelling out grenade, lobbing it. Here's some gunfire close outside. You see the cameraman here showing a little selfie. Really
Дивлюся,
quickly.
штани не кровить, нахуй, їбать. Все штани на вже крові, нахуй.
Блять, знімаємо, ну скучно, роз'їжджаємо магазин.
Поставимо в домі, в підвалі. Четверо цивільних.
2. Сюди. 1 тил. Рація відерська. Якась заряджена є, щоб ми слухали їх. Візьмемо одну, потім прослухаємо.
Если у вас там есть побрат, друзья,
Блять, хто вміє на русскому?
Мені придется вас связать. Окей? Давай. Руки. Да.
He's continuing to process more prisoners.
Не сильно? Не сильно пережал?
Зустрілись представники сміжників.
Ну ми ще не закончили.
Пацани, що бежали, ми тільки що уїбали своїм дроном 2 підерських мавіка.
You see them trying to conduct drone interceptions above the battlefield. See an M113 pulling up, most likely to conduct medevac. Mortar rounds landing nearby.
Да.
Залишайтесь у укритті, коли буде тихіше повернетесь. Ви молодці. Діма, Антоха погрожені, правильно?
Плюс і уїхали.
Воюємо далі. Наші 2 хатки осталися. Всім до побачення. Цілую, люблю.
Yeah, see them wandering through the wheat.
Саме мені обідно, що в цьому всьому, що таку красу, блядь, я тільки побачив на війні. Ну, а хто сидить вдома, хуй ви коли таке більше і побачите.
And that's the end of that clip. It's still showing a decent amount of the action up in that area. Meanwhile, moving a little bit further on down the line, we also get to see the 14th Brigade taking out a Russian mortar crew with some drones. Boom! Knocking them out right there. Now we can see them finding a D-20 right here. They're going to be destroying that one as well. Oh, right on the barrel. The barrel's gone for good. And we can see another 120mm artillery piece getting hit. And man, Maddie, I saw you put out the no politics announcement. That is getting less and less followed, to be honest, the closer the election's getting. Like, literally each day that passes, I see more people trying to break that rule and subtly put out some political opinion or something, which is getting rough, because we're kind of having to walk a bit of a tightrope here, because we're going to have to probably start enforcing that pretty seriously. Like, we're doing that kind of on and off sporadically. Like, it's always enforced, but sometimes we'll let things slide just a little bit. But I have a feeling that we're going to have to start enforcing that literally across the board pretty heavily here soon, because a lot of people seem to be openly breaking the no politics rule, even some folks who have been here for a good while, knowing that that's the rule. But moving on from that, we are also able to see the Ukrainian soldiers of the 77th also conducting a counterattack against the Russians in this direction today.
Man, they've got, like, what, multiple Discord screens open? Like, how did they get their Discord call so clear?
Man, I wonder, man. I wonder. And we see them continuing to fire. And also, I see some people, the mind just cannot understand this. I don't know why. We say no politics. I say that we can talk a little bit on a limited level about it, as long as I equally critique or praise both sides, so that way we openly do not have bias. And then people sit there and extrapolate out of that. So clearly I can say partisan politics in my opinion and how the other side sucks, because the enforcer equally condemned both sides for doing badly at something. That does not make any sense. Like, if I see someone try and make that logical conclusion, I will assume that all has been lost and a ban must be issued. Like that, I'm sorry. That's just how it'll have to go.
It's real medieval, and we shall reach the conclusion, and the ban shall be issued.
Man, honestly, I put that out like, and the rich shall be warranted that they should, something like that. I was like, that wasn't supposed to come out that medieval sounding, but apparently,
like that medieval guy said in Shrek. He said, "Some of you may die, but
that is
a sacrifice I'm willing to make."
Yeah, man. But we can see a T-90M getting blown up down here near Lehman today.
Oh, man.
Dang. Toasted.
Damn, son. Where'd you find this?
Oh, man. And with that, that's the end of that clip, but very nice to see such amazing actions being conducted. Meanwhile, just a little ways away, we actually got to see a Ukrainian tank in action about 12 miles to the south. And we're going to be muting the Chad music there. Boom, 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 or something like that. What color is your
the lyrics in that? Hit him and kick him. Hit him and kick him.
Man, the funk music has always got the dumbest lyrics.
It's like they're like singing about assault in the song. It's like, this is real Chad.
Hit him again.
I'm gonna hit him and kick him. Hit him and kick him.
Curb stomp orcs, roundhouse kick orcs or something like that. It's like, what the hell are these lyrics? And we see them having to unstick a tank from the mud.
I guess you could say the Ukrainians hit him and kick him, and hit him and kick him.
Hit him and kick him. Hit him and kick him again. Or something like that. But anyways, we also get to see Russia's getting hit pretty hardly in this area by drones as well. I need RPG for my bunghole. Or something like that. You know, some people say we sound like Beavis and Butthead. Might as well just lean into it. When in Rome, you know.
Oh man.
No, that's Bert
It's a
and
tough
Ernie
day
over
when
there.
Beavis and Butthead's got like 10 or 15 times the viewership of someone who claims to be a real journalist.
Aw, man, I'm a real journalist. Allow me to tell you all of my biased affiliations. Aw, man, some of them don't even make sense. Like I say the Russians are evil, but when the Russians support terrorists in the Middle East, then I say that the terrorists are actually the good guys. Aw, man. Oh my goodness.
Damn.
Man,
We
who the
live
hell's
as long as
driving
we
around
fight.
out there? Who's driving around there, man, with a muffler out there, man? I'm about to have to go and ask them to keep it down. But moving on from that, and
Man, it's like they're doing laps around here or something. It's like that same vehicle is like driven by like 3 or 4 times now. Like, what the hell?
Man,
Also, that lag is doing laps around me too.
man, I'm telling you what, man, tonight's just one of those nights, I suppose. But moving on from that, we were able to see some drones dropping some munitions in the Chasiv Yar region. And there goes the bomblet. Boom! Dead on the nail.
Quantum Fighter said, so who's going to be the Bevis of the two?
Beavis.
Or Beavis.
The
Is that how you spell
Beavis.
Beavis?
Yeah. I think it's actually Beavis. But
yeah, that says Bevis, man. It doesn't say Beavis.
Oh, he said Bevis, though. He said who's going to be Bevis and Butthead.
Bevis. That's like that off-brand of Beavis, like Bevis.
Yeah. Like the Bevis and the Abibus and all that. Yeah. Oh, look, man, we got a grandstander here. Armchair Warriors. Look, man, I don't say I'm a soldier. Get out of here. Anyways, moving on from that, we can see another bomblet hitting them. Oh, toilet paper thrown everywhere.
See, I was right. It does say Bevis. Everybody's saying, yeah, that said Bevis. I said who Beavis. I don't know who the hell Beavis or Butthole was. What was his name?
Beavis and Butthead, Matthew, not Butthole. Bevis and Butthole, man. That's a rip-off version of Beavis.
I saw Cold J say Beavis and Borthole. I was like, what the hell? I was like, what the hell does this mean, man? But I don't know, like, which one is which, honestly, to tell you the truth. Never really watched it. I know who they are, but I've never seen it.
Man, he said Bevis and Butthole. Oh my god. That's going to be the Enforcer special. Coming to you live at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Bevis and Butthole.
I seriously, like, did not mean to say that. Like, to be honest with you, like, I really don't know the whole cartoon or anything like that. I'm just taking stabs at
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. So I said something I can't repeat out loud, but oh my god.
Bevis and Butthole, dude. I can't believe. Oh my god.
Oh god.
Oh my god. That's never going to die, will it? That will be one for the books. But we can see the Russians getting slammed down there in the meantime.
Someone said that sounds kind of kinky.
That's it. That's like James May. That sounds kind of pervy. It's like just a little bit, I guess. Actually, that guy he was talking to was kind of pervy. He was like, "We go into the like the maid cafe or whatever." What was it, Matthew? I don't even know what it was.
Like a Cat's maid cafe or something like that. He said that sounds kind of pervy.
It is. Like he was right on that. And we can see the Russians still getting slammed. Also, thank you, Matthew Wood, for subscribing, by the way. That's very nice of you. And actually, dang, our subscribership's actually gone up pretty massively in the middle of the show. It's gone up by like 100 just from the stream.
Man, it was
like,
that video I put out today. I'm telling the story, man. It was not the video. For some reason, the video didn't bring in a ton of subscribers today. I don't know what happened. Like, the video was like the traditional style of video. Some days, the algorithm does not pick it up. I think, honestly, the nuclear and Russia going together, that's always a recipe for a bad title because everybody's like, oh, no, not Russia and the nuke threats again because they make them literally all the time. That's probably what it was.
Oh, and this video is a little too spicy to show. We'll have to move
Oh,
on.
not safe for work.
Oh, and we're not even at work. Like, y'all aren't even at work.
We are at work.
Well, we are at work, but they're not. We could show it to them. Oh, yeah, by the way, here's an SU-25 launching some rockets. Really nice. I'm sorry, everyone, if I'm quiet tonight. I'm everything before the show, and you know, not to talk about that too much because I kind of harped on that, I think, a little bit enough tonight. I've said it like one time or twice, I think, at this point. But everything before the show was completely thrown off its timetable for really honestly some just ridiculous reasons. Like, we had to do it, but it was ridiculous nonetheless. And so I wasn't really able to do a lot of the pre-stream prep I usually do, like eating before the show. So I'm starving right now, and also I'm kind of worn out from everything that happened earlier. So moving on from that,
You usually do eating before the show, like it's a pastime. Like I usually do eating. Like I kind of watch Netflix for the show.
Oh, what are some things you do for fun? Feeding, like, you know, feeding, drinking, walking, talking. You know, it's like, oh, that's probably copyrighted. I don't know where that music is from, though. I don't even know what song that was, but we could see the Russians getting slammed in the meantime. It's still going. It didn't break into like some rock music or something, where it goes, the boss, something like that. You know, it's always some goofy song like that. So I said, need like a mini fridge. I just need food, honestly. Like, fridge, that's hype talk. Fridge food's too expensive. We just need like animal crackers or something like that. That'll be fine. And so with that, we're now moving on from that, and I can cook. Y'all, I can cook a mean grilled cheese. Like, Harlem Shake? Dude, that's that guy on Jimmy Neutron, man, when he's about to talk to Jimmy's mom, but he's too scared to. He's like, what? Oh, Jimmy, can you ask your mom to give me a croissant? Or something like that. It's like, no. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you, man?
Also, by the way, I see Pella Ryder said something here that I don't think we're bringing up tonight in the news schedule because it wasn't like able to be included tonight. But they said, I was not kidding. Cuba's been without electricity for 12 hours now. I think that's pretty good news. That is huge news, by the way. Their power plant had a catastrophic failure down there, and they've been without electricity in Cuba for literally, like you said, 12 hours right now. And there's no sign of the thing getting turned back on. So there's communism for you. That's what it'll get you.
Man, I'm telling you, communism will give you milkshakes and no electricity to cool them. And so with that, we're moving on into our next clip, where we got to see the 46th Brigade slamming some Russians in this area. Check it out. And we can see them showing us a little Russian column advancing as they're just slamming them in the Mando unit.
You know what happens when the power plant goes out in Cuba? That means the Chinese doesn't have the power to their spy base, probably.
Like, it's like, how do they even
bring out the generator for that one?
Dude, how in the world do they even make electricity down there, man? It's not like they have coal on the island. Like, what do they make it out of?
I don't even know. They're probably throwing the Cuban cigars that they used to sell in the furnace or something to get it lit up.
Cuban power grid. Let's go to Wikipedia and let's see if we can get some answers. So, the power plant at Havana, Cuba, at the capital failed, and the entire national power grid plummeted into oblivion when it shut down. Like, no joke, that was literally the whole point of failure. Is one power plant went down, the whole grid went down.
Damn, man, that's tough when that happens, man. That's like they don't have any redundancies down there or something like that.
Nah, man, they just have the one power plant in Havana, and it runs the whole island.
That's kind of stupid. Like, I wonder what they're really doing now. Like, are they going to try to fix it? You know, they don't really have many parts. So maybe they're having to, like, reach out to Russia or, like, China or something like that and be like, hey, can we get a little part? And they're like, yeah, we'll ship it on the next boat.
And the next boat's, like, 3 months away. Like, because they get no shipping traffic or anything. Man, and someone said, Venezuelan oil burners. Maybe it's an oil power plant. But even still, that means that Cuba is completely energy dependent on another country, because there's no coal, there's no oil in Cuba. There's like no energy source in Cuba that they could just, you know, take advantage of. They don't have a nuclear power plant, so whatever they're doing, it's completely dependent on someone else. Oh, and they're cooking. And they're toasting. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that, and a little bit further on down out of that area, it's now time for us to move on down towards Zaporizhzhia, where we got to see that Baba Yaga is leaving splendid gifts. And there it is, on the street. It's a mine, and it just blew up. Oh my heavens.
Man, that was mines.
Man, no matter what, I'm going to get mines. And so with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Very nice to see. And moving on out of the Zaporizhzhia area and down to Kherson, we also got to see the 38th Marines in southern Ukraine at work. Check this out. And we're going to be muting that, but we can see the Russians wandering around.
Also, I see Eric Kress said Cuba's oil supply got cut in half from last year. Also, I see people saying that it runs on oil, apparently, the power plant. So, kind of interesting. Kind of sucks to be in Cuba right now, I guess you could say.
Man, you know it must really suck to be in Cuba because the reality is none of them actually have electricity. So, like, the 50 people who did just went without it. It's like, dude, things really got bad. Like, we're talking about it's bad. You know what? What does Cuba look like at night? Cuba at night from space. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, they do have a an actual power grid. Like, it actually does span the island.
It's nothing like crazy notable or anything like that, but they got a little power. More than North Korea, so that's saying a lot.
Dude, this is Florida up there versus Cuba.
Man, I tell you what, it's like barely anything. It's like they've at least they got power there. Like I got to give them credit for that because like when you look at North Korea from the topographical map like this at night, there's literally no power at all.
Man, there is literally not a dot, like except for Pyongyang. The world at night from space.
Man, this is the communists down there talking like this. There's no vision, there's no passion, there's no damn mindset.
Man, look at this, man. Like you can see North Korea over there. It doesn't even exist. Cuba hardly exists. And then let's see. Practically all of Africa doesn't exist on the electrical grid. A lot of the East Coast exists. The West Coast is just giant, well, like really big cities, but everything else is non-existent. And then you can see Denver right there. And then Europe is just huge amounts of lights. And then you can see that over here in China, it's only the East Coast, and then everyone else doesn't have electricity either. They're all just out there, just raw dogging life. You know what I mean? Like that, no electricity.
They're doing what?
They're just raw dogging life, man. You know, it's a phrase. It's just a phrase. Hotel Trivago. Moving on from that, though. Moving on from that side note, on up into the city of Kyiv, we were also able to get the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky today. And we ain't having none of that wishing health, my fellow Ukrainians. We're having that in Ukrainian right here. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Give me a speech, please. I want speech.
Long-lasting speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні вже в Києві працюємо з результатами наших перемовин, цієї зустрічі в Європі і розмови з нашими партнерами. Була розмова з президентом Байденом. Ми готуємось до зустрічі в Україні з американською командою, політичні, військові представники. Раніше наші представники, начальник Генштабу і віце-прем'єр-міністр Стефанішина були у Вашингтоні. Міністр оборони України Умєров, міністр закордонних справ України Сибіга, головнокомандувач Сирський працюють зі своїми колегами в Європі. Розвиваємо наш план перемоги у спілкуванні з партнерами. Окремо триває робота щодо підготовки другого саміту миру, справжньої дипломатії. Нам потрібно закінчити війну так, щоб гарантувати безпеку та спокій українцям і всій Україні. Будуть відповідні зустрічі керівника Офісу Єрмака та прем'єр-міністра України Шмигаля. Я вдячний кожному лідеру, кожній державі, які сприйняли наші аргументи щодо безпеки та готові допомагати саме так, щоб направити наявну ситуацію курсом до миру. Сьогодні ж була доповідь головкома Сирського, це фронт, це наші напрямки, це і Курська операція. Захищаємо наші позиції. Була нарада щодо роботи залізниці в Україні. Я вдячний усім, хто працює в компанії. Укрзалізниця дійсно багато в чому тримає на собі нашу країну зараз. Сьогодні ж була доповідь віце-прем'єр-міністра Федорова. Є хороші результати. І саме це найголовніше для України. Мати щодня, щотижня результати для нашої держави і людей. Мати постійно нову підтримку для нашого захисту і мати більше можливостей, щоб наблизити мир. Україна в кожній ситуації має бути лідером, пропонувати рішення, пропонувати шляхи і направляти роботу так, щоб кожен партнер вигравав від співпраці з Україною. І ще одне. Я хочу сьогодні подякувати нашим українським правоохоронцям, зокрема Національній поліції, кожному і кожній, хто працює заради правопорядку в Україні. Майже щотижня у них є результати в протидії злочинності. І нещодавно мені доповідали по одній такій операції. З червня по жовтень поліція працювала, ліквідували 19 нарколабораторій. Обіг майже 350 мільйонів гривень на місяць. Це була значна міжрегіональна злочинна діяльність. Те саме стосується і протидії обігу зброї, незаконному обігу зброї та захисту наших людей від інших проявів злочинності. І дуже важливо, щоб інституції працювали заради внутрішньої безпеки в Україні. І я дякую всім, хто справді фаховий у цьому. Слава Україні!
And the rum slava. And with that is the...
Slava.
Oh, it finally came through. And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 968 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that is moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. After such a long and eventful day, it has been one hell of a day, on air and off air. And I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for having been here with us so far. About the 10.4 thousand people who are here at the peak, and about the 64,000 people who have watched so far. We are entirely grateful and appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here so far, and I hope that a lot of y'all stick around, as we are going to be having an incredibly fun time through the remainder of this segment. And so, Matthew, please take it away.
All right, and moving on to our last question segment of the night. We have no more polls to address, by the way, so we're moving straight into our Super Chat questions. And our first one here is going to go to Chase Maddie, who's a longtime channel legend, by the way, and he puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Chase Maddie, for that support. He said, is this going to be like World War II, where we see significant parts of the civilized world fall into darkness and an attack on our fleet before we finally take control of the situation?
I would have to say that as far as this situation evolving a lot like World War II, it kind of is, because there are isolated wars or diplomatic incidents that are starting to happen around the world all at the same time, and it continues to grow, and we're just kind of sitting back and watching it all happen. I would say that that's very similar. And as far as I would know, I don't think there's going to be an attack on a U.S. fleet, because the reality is that we're pretty much at a constant state of readiness at this point. In most areas of the world, we are pretty much always ready, and that's kind of what has really dictated the entirety of the Cold War, is an endless state of readiness. The United States military isn't like the military it was in World War II, where people were stood down and were just kind of sitting around waiting for something to happen. We're always ready for something to happen at this point. So I don't think that there would ever be a crippling attack on any of America's naval assets for that reason, because we're always ready. As far as an attempt that could be conducted, but it would not be successful, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Chase Maddie, and helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to make this thing possible, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now covering this news and making sure that this channel is possible. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one right here is going to go to Ari Sowini, also known as Kiwi Wife and Finn, who's an old guard, by the way, and puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Ari, Kiwi Wife and Finn, for that support, of course. And I do not see a comment attached to it, sadly, so nothing to address. But thank you very much once again, Ari, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank the both of y'all, Kiwi Wife and Finn, also known on the account Ari Sweeney, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And I got to give y'all a huge thanks and a massive shout out once again for always having been with this channel for an incredibly long time. An old guards actually, through and through. And I got to thank y'all for being here with us tonight and supporting this channel and continuing to help us to keep this thing running. It's been a little bit of a time keeping this thing running, to be entirely honest. Now, I've enjoyed and loved doing it every single second on air, but sometimes things get a little bit difficult behind the scenes. Not in our personal lives, just sometimes things are always trying to fight for our time where we are not able to give it entirely to the show. But we are entirely dedicated, regardless of what happens, regardless of anything else, to keep the show running and on air. We've been dedicated to that for 968 days now. I made that pretty much my entire purpose of running this channel way back at the very beginning of it, 3 years ago, and that will continue to be our objective well into the future. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, Ari Sweeney, Kiwi Wife, and Finn, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now running this channel and making this thing a reality. And so with that, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to none other than Greg Carrier, who's also a channel legend and puts in a $20 donation. And a huge shout to you, Greg, for that support. And he said, good to see some back in the USA and understand what has been going on in the world. And may God guide and protect Ukraine and the whole Western world.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support. And I certainly agree. Things are very strenuous at the moment around the world, and hopefully there can be some good guidance and sound judgment seen around the entirety of the world, because it's certainly something that is unfortunately missed at the moment, but hopefully we'll see that a lot of people snap to it and start enacting that sort of a measure. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, and we wouldn't be able to be here right now to be able to cover all of the struggles, but also at the same time the triumphs of the Western world. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to John Person, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to John Person for that support. And he says, please consider streaming over a wired Ethernet connection. And the Wi-Fi is what's slowing you down. And that said, thanks for the insightful news and dedication and LSA.
And I thank you for saying that, because we know that. I hate to say it. Like, we actually do know that. This isn't anything that's happening because of ignorance. We are working towards that. It's just that things take a little bit of time behind the scenes. Because we're on here every single night. It always seems like things can be done instantaneously in the background, but we have to be able to get the Cat 6 connection in my room to be able to hook this thing up. Matthew actually has one right next to him, so he can actually plug up immediately. But really the one that's most important is mine, because my computer is actually the one that is hosting the stream. So as far as internet connectivity and stuff goes, mine's the top priority, and it doesn't actually have a Cat 6 cable near it from what we know. Hopefully we can find out opposite to that. There's like a hidden hope that we don't really know about yet, like not to foreshadow that or anything. Like, I really don't know either, but hopefully there's some hope in this possible option that we have where we can hook it up to Ethernet and run the show without a hitch. But I do thank you so much for your kind words and very thoughtful input there, because we do know that that is the issue, and hopefully we can actually fix that, so that way we don't end up running into this problem over and over and over again, because it's as aggravating to us as it is to y'all. And I thank so many of y'all for being dedicated into trying to help us to find a fix for this as well. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and thank you for supporting this channel and making it possible, because you enjoy the news regardless. And also, you're helping us to make this thing a ad-free, sponsor-free stream as well, because it's always ad-free and sponsor-free every single day of the week, which is a really impressive thing when you think about it. But still, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Von Rees, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to you, Von Rees, for that support as well. We appreciate it. And it said, I've heard that China joined Russia too.
And no, that has not happened yet. I thank you for the support, but China has not joined Russia. We have seen that they provided some material support, but from what we know, it's almost all non-lethal material support. We've not seen any proof of lethal material support yet, and so they have not joined the Russians. Like, they kind of do some things here and there, and we don't know if that's actually the Chinese government or just private companies in China that are selling stuff to the Russians. We really don't know. But they have not joined the Russians 100% yet. That has not happened. The Chinese are kind of fence riding this thing at the moment and publicly saying that they're not really for either side and they just want wars to end around the world. But while at the same time kind of providing some stuff to the Russians, but no weapons at the moment. And so with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can at the moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Lord Lathos LSA, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And Lord Lathos says, do you think if Russian forces start to be suppressed, offering Putin a way out, and allow them to claim victory by, quote unquote, in his words, denazifying Ukraine, would Putin go for it?
Reread that one again. I think I need to understand that one a little bit better.
He said, "Do you think that if Russian forces start to be suppressed, then that would offer Putin a way out and then allow them to claim victory by quote unquote denazifying Ukraine? And would Putin go for it?"
I'm having a disconnect here. I don't know. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this. I don't know how the Ukrainians suppressing the Russian forces and stopping them from advancing would be construed as a victory in denazification, because the Ukrainian government would still exist by the end of that. Are you understanding that a different way, Matthew?
I was trying to read it here. Let's see. Do you think if Russian forces start to be suppressed, offering Putin a way out, allow them to claim victory for this? So I think maybe Lord Lathos was saying here that if the Russians start to get bogged down, which I think right now they really are bogged down, they're kind of in a stalemate right now. Then maybe if Ukraine offered Putin a way out to say that maybe they denazified Ukraine, then would Putin go for it? I don't think that situation would probably ever come up if that's the way to properly interpret the question, because Ukraine would never fall for that or go into that kind of like line of reasoning. They would never say anything like that, because that literally leans right into Russian propaganda. But maybe he would go for it if that were to happen, but I'm not really sure.
I would say they probably wouldn't go for that at the moment, because the Russians are about as hell-bent on total victory as the Ukrainians are as well, at the moment at least. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can at the moment. And I do thank you so much for the support once again in helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. But before we move on to the next one, I do see a question from a new viewer, Kmart85, and they said, why are there no memberships? And this is always a question that some new viewers have, because every single YouTube channel on Earth has memberships except for ours. And why is that the case? There are two reasons why. One, it's incredibly tacky, and two, it's money grubbing. This channel isn't really into money grubbing. We make a fine living as it is, and I'm not really looking to really squeeze everyone dry and make every single cent that we possibly can off of every single viewer. And I feel that memberships kind of do that. It's money grubbing in a way, and I'm just not really a big fan of it. YouTube's always sending us these emails. Like, I don't know if Matthew sees them. I always see them because the email that this channel is registered under is my email for the channel. And I'm always seeing that YouTube's like, just turn on your memberships and we'll literally give y'all like $2,500 right now. Just turn on the memberships.
Damn.
Like, no joke, they actually continuously offer us like a bonus to turn on the memberships, and we just don't. Like, it is not about the money at all running this channel. Like, we have to make money to be able to do this as a full-time job, but I'm not at all going to compromise on our initial integral kind of a thing about this channel where it's completely free to watch. Like, if people really, really do enjoy it, and they consider themselves a big fan of the channel and they want to support it and help it to keep on running, there are always super chats, and then we also have a Patreon. But as far as like trying to push people to get a membership or having YouTube really harass, which is kind of the tacky side of things, everyone who clicks on this channel to get a membership, I'm just not a big fan of that at all. I just think it's a really bad look. It looks like we're really prioritizing money over our news and the kind of quality that we put into it, and that's why we've never turned on memberships, and that's why we'll never have memberships, because I would rather take a massive hit and not get that bonus from YouTube than, turn that on and make this channel look really tacky with the whole membership side of things. On top of that, one other thing, this isn't really like a main point, but this is another important thing to me, is that it stratifies our live chat, which I don't really like. Not that I'm like a socialist or anything. I'm like, I believe it should be classless, but I don't really like the kind of dynamic that's created when memberships become a thing, because it's really tacky to me, like the different colored usernames that indicate that someone is putting more money into the channel than someone else, so their opinion may weigh more in the live chat than someone else's, and they may be able to pull rank or something like that. I don't really like that much, because it makes it to where folks in the live chat don't really feel as free to speak to each other like they do right now. Like, we have an incredibly loving and incredibly great community in the LSA, and I think it really is because it's not stratified from memberships. Everyone just feels the same. They're all a member of the LSA, and that's all that matters. And that's why we never will go down the membership route. I really don't like it when other channels do it either, especially in this kind of a sphere, because everyone always talks about how they're all like, they're selflessly for Ukraine only, you're something like that, you know, and then you click on their stream, and the first thing that pops up is this giant window stopping you from looking at the stream that says give money to this YouTube channel. If you don't, you're an asshole. And then if you click on it, you're pretty much saying I'm an asshole, I don't want to give them money, and then you start watching the stream. And it's like, I don't like how YouTube goes about that, because it's a very kind of like aggressive thing to me. Like, if someone wants to support the channel with a membership, I don't feel like that should be like a window that pops up every time you click on someone's stream that has memberships on. So that's like another reason why we don't do it. There's a lot of reasons why, but generally it's that it's tacky, it's money grubbing, and that isn't at all what this channel is about. Like, you know, and I have to give a full disclaimer here. Our only income in life is off of this channel. We do this as a full-time job. This is our business. But at the same time, I'm not going to compromise our moral integrity or our integrity of making this a news channel for increased profits. That would just be something that I'm just not a big fan of at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because I always like to think, and this is one more thing, this is maybe a good way to put this, I always like to think that reputation is a much better currency than hard cash, and that's why we also don't run memberships, is because I believe that that is better reputationally, because we say we're not about the money, and then we make sure that our YouTube channel is geared to where it's not harassing everyone to give folks money. That's kind of a thing to me, and I think that reputation is honestly far more important than money for the most part as far as running the YouTube channel. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I hope that explains in multiple ways why we don't have memberships, because a lot of people always ask that question, and that's pretty much the same answer we've had for about 3 years now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to Neil as well. He says, Belarus has sent small amounts of manpower several months ago with evidence on Steam. And can someone with better memory than me in the chat back me up?
And I thank you so much for the support. And at the moment, I don't really know. Let's see. Hang on here. Let me make sure I can find this one. Let's see. Belarus sent small amounts with evidence on stream. Can someone with better memory than me in the chat back me up? I don't know if we did cover that. I don't ever remember Belarusians being captured or killed on the front lines that we could verifiably produce information on. I think there was equipment that they sent, and we did see a Belarusian military buildup along the northern border. Maybe that's what you're talking about, but I don't remember. And I have a pretty decent memory on this, but it could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't think Belarusians have ever been involved in the war directly, because we've kind of been on the fence recently about whether they would directly or indirectly get involved. And from what I know, materially, they are somewhat involved, but personnel-wise, they're not involved. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for supporting Neil Vizanon, asking a good question. I might actually be wrong in that. We may have actually said that in the past, and it was just a small point that we didn't really focus on too much, but it would disprove some statements that we've made tonight, so it probably would be important to clarify that, at least on our end, or if someone else, a channel historian, could figure that out for us and clarify that as well, that would probably be really good. Also, someone said, really quickly, Matthew, Great Mate said, your channel won't grow without memberships. That is untrue. This channel has actually grown rapidly over the past year without memberships. We have grown about 150,000 subscribers just this year. And that is only this year, which is actually crazy when you think about it. That's actually the fastest we've ever grown in a single year on this channel, but even faster than the first year of the war. We are growing at a really fast clip these days, and you don't actually need memberships to make the channel work, like or to really get YouTube to push it, because our content is so good. Like, the big thing to YouTube is keeping people on the platform, to explain kind of mechanically how YouTube works. YouTube loves it when people stay on the platform. So anyone who is able to get certain kinds of retention marks on their stuff, they generally promote them. It doesn't really matter if they're making the most money, it just matters if they're keeping them on the platform. And YouTube has found out over time we're actually really good at retaining people. Like, our short war videos retain 50% of the audience halfway through the video, which is unheard of. Like, that is actually about like some of the most successful YouTube channels on the platform get about 50% retention. Anything above that is considered a miracle or godlike, and sometimes we just eke out a little bit above 50% here and there. So we actually do incredibly good on viewer retention, and not only on videos, but also on live streams, because our average viewer retention for about a 3-hour stream is approximately 25 minutes, which is also incredibly good according to YouTube metrics, because usually the average viewer retention is somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes. So we are just blowing that proportion out of the water for a 3-hour stream. And so YouTube looks at those kinds of metrics and they go, these people are interesting enough, people love listening to them, and so we'll keep promoting them. Because as long as people are staying on the platform, there's a chance that y'all will spend money, either through a super chat to this channel, which YouTube makes 30% off of that, or y'all will end up getting tired of watching endless ads, which we don't run on this channel, luckily, and then y'all will get a YouTube Premium membership or something along those lines. But that is kind of YouTube's thing, is that the longer y'all are on the platform, there's a higher chance that y'all will spend some kind of money and they will be able to make a profit off of that. So as long as you are keeping retention high on your stuff, they will start to promote you a lot more. And then you also have to get into thumbnails and titles and everything else, which is like a secret soup that you kind of have to figure out on your own. There's not like a one size fits all kind of a solution to that. What works the best. But that is a really big thing on YouTube, is having a great thumbnail and a great title, and then when people get on your content, how long do they stay on? And if they stay on really long, then you've hit the jackpot. YouTube is just going to promote you endlessly, whether you're making the money or not, because you're just hitting everything in the algorithms that they're looking for. And so I hope that does kind of like answer that well, because we have got that like we've had that sorted out for at least a year and a half at this point, how that works. Not that it really matters a lot in the long run, because we still do what we do regardless of the algorithm, but the algorithm is liking us a lot these days, because doing what we do, we end up favoring the algorithm greatly. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I thank you for bringing up that point. But we do have that sorted out, and we will be a-okay, grade mate. But I thank you for having some concern there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to Robin, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Robin, for that support as well. They said, no politics, and could I say from the old Greek poly meaning, many, and ticks, small, annoying, blood-sucking parasites.
That's a pretty good one. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Robin. And I gotta say, that probably is a pretty decent summary of politics in the modern day. Really, politics historically has always been like that, to be entirely honest. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Glock Glock, who's there, LSA, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to you, Glock Glock, who's there for that support. They said John Wayne would have proudly seemed in the LSA. And Enforcer, can you do a John Wayne impression? And Enforcer, what day you?
And I gotta tell you, Pilgrim, I'm not a big fan of doing a John Wayne impersonation. I don't know if I'm doing that well or not. I honestly think I'm doing pretty badly at that. I have done one in the past, though, and I did pretty good at it. I don't know if that one was good or not. But hey, we are happy to have anyone in the LSA. Literally anyone and everyone. Anyone of any walk of life here in America, or really the Western world as a whole, is welcome in the Lee Spring Army, as long as they believe in American and Western interests around the globe. That's always what we believe in. So if John Wayne wanted to become a part of the LSA and he believed in American and Western interests around the globe, he would be more than welcome here. Anyone would be welcome here. I mean, literally anyone. And that's something that I got to make incredibly clear, because unlike other channels that say that only this certain political affiliation is welcome, or that political affiliation is welcome, or only these kind of people are welcome, or these kind of people are welcome in some other way, usually it goes down a political vein. We don't make any distinction on that. I really do not care about y'all's personal political affiliations. Y'all are all Americans. That's your own personal and really private business about what kind of political profession you have. That's really y'all's deal. That's not mine to know. And really all I care about is that if y'all stand for the same things I stand for, which is supporting our interests worldwide, then y'all are in the LSA in my book. That's how I look at it. But I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to say that John Wayne could be a member of the LSA, and I think he actually would like the LSA, because we are pro-American and pro-Western. I think John Wayne, at the most basic level, was pro-American through and through. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here is going to go to none other than Duncan VR, the channel legend. He's from Australia and puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support as always. And he has the animal noises. He says, "Bamuba, bamu quack. I put money on it that Iran will send troops to Ukraine next." Well, man, I'm telling you, that sounds bad, Duncan. He said, "Oh, man, that fly found a lady fly." Buzz, buzz. Let's see here.
Aw, man. Insert some
man.
real hot dog man stuff. Aw, man. We're gonna hotbox and I'm absolutely going to simp. Oh, I'm simping. Or something like that. But still, I gotta thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and throwing in the traditional animal noises. It wouldn't be an LSA night without traditional animal noises. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to sit there and have a good laugh at that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to Adam as well for that very generous support, and we appreciate it, Adam. He said, "I just love you. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it, and here we are."
Hey, thank you so much for the kind words, Adam McLean, because we love every single one of y'all. Y'all are the LSA through and through, and every member of the LSA we care for. We love y'all, folks, because y'all are honestly everything we have. I mean, y'all are all we have. You know, I like to look at it, optimistically. So I say that y'all are everything we have. And I got to thank y'all for that, because y'all have been a massive amount of inspiration, a massive amount of help. Y'all have always been a source of incredibly kind words and nothing but endless adoration. And y'all don't know how much that means to us sometimes, because we don't get into our personal lives much on air. And that's really not anything we want to bring on air. This isn't a drama channel. This is a news channel. But every once in a while, there are things that go on behind the scenes that can kind of lead you to have a little bit of a stressful time, a little bit of a rough day. And sometimes you don't always hear the greatest of things behind the scenes, you know. It's not always sunshine and rainbows in the enforcer world. But one thing I will say is that it always is sunshine and rainbows here in the LSA. We always come on here every single night, and all of y'all always have some of the kindest things to say to us that we've ever seen. I mean, we truly have never seen people, or so many people, say so many kind things all the time. It means a great deal to us. It means more than y'all could ever even know. And I got to thank y'all all once again, especially you, Adam McLean, for the kind words and the support that y'all are always showing us. Not in super chats, but in actual words, because it means a lot to us. It means an incredible deal. And we are always grateful and appreciative for the most important thing in the world, really, to Enforcer Matt and me, which is the entirety of the LSA. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Adam McLean, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to JR Does Stuff, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, JR, for that support. He said, "Guys, it would be nice to see South Korea do a tit for tat and match the troops the North is sending to Ukraine, and with their APCs and tanks, take a live chat and LSA." And JR, that would be honestly pretty good. But I think the first step is South Korea actually has to step up and actually follow through with his last promise that they were going to start arming Ukraine if the North sent troops. They really haven't followed through with that, which is kind of a little bit telling, but they really should as a first step. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say if they wanted to do something like that, I would not be against that at all. And I think that would be very interesting to see, because the South Koreans actually have a very fleshed out armed force, like a very modernized one, and it would probably do very good in Ukraine, to be entirely honest. So if they did that, I would be interested to see how that would go for them. I think it would actually go incredibly well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. JR Does Stuff, and that would be interesting to see them do a tit for tat like that in Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tom Xman, who puts in a 10 and says, he said this in his own words, by the way. He said, "Let's super chat the Enforcers, everyone."
Oh, no. Like, no. I thank you so much for the support. And I thank you for wanting to see this channel get support. But we never want to pressure anyone to support the channel. we always give a huge shout out and a huge thanks and let everyone know that super chats are the way that this channel keeps running. But we never want anyone to actually hear that you must support the Enforcer channel. No one has to throw in a single cent or a single dime. Everyone can sit back and just enjoy this thing from here till the end of time, until the end of y'all's lives, decades in the future, if we're still on air by that point, and not have thrown in a single dime and feel completely fine about it. We don't want the channel to feel like we're always forcing people to try and give us money, because I just can't stand that. Like, I don't like it when I go on other people's channels and they do that, and I really don't want that to be the feeling that we give to folks here in the LSA, because I feel like that's, like, the thing I don't like about that is I feel like it's really abusing people's trust. Like, y'all like the Enforcer channel, y'all like me, and y'all like Enforcer Matt. And so there is a bias inherent in all of y'all to like us. And then we know that, and then we're going to abuse that bias by telling y'all, if you really like us, like, because that's kind of what we would say if we said something like that. If y'all really like us, y'all would give us money. And then we take advantage of that bias that y'all have towards us in our favor to support us. And I just, man, I don't like that. Like, I don't like that at all. I feel like it's a pretty kind of a bad thing to promote. Like I completely understand where you're coming from, though, and I'm not wanting to say that you were doing anything bad and you should be admonished for it, but I can never back up a statement or get behind anything like that, because I would feel like we're kind of taking advantage of folks liking us, and I don't really like that much, like on like a personal level. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it does make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next support here is going to go to Augustin Lara, who puts in a $10 donation, and huge shout out to Augustin for that support. He said, I have a question, but it exceeds the word limits, and Enforcer Matt, hopefully you can answer it. Augustin, I did not see the question come in. Like, I think I responded and said, tag me in it, and I'll add it to the super chat, but I did not see it. So if you have the question and you still want it answered, let us see it, and we will be glad to call it off. But sadly, I don't have it right now. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support. Sadly, Augustin, I didn't see it either, and I wish we could get it, but sadly we don't have it. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible day in and day out. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And if we can find that, we will make sure to circle back to it and answer it. But thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we had a massive $50 donation from Danny B. And thank you very much, Danny B, for the 5th ever Super Channel live stream, by the way. He said, Enforcers, good evening today. Was kind of a shit day. I feel that.
Yeah.
He said, until the stream came on, and then I went from earbud to both. But oh well, chef life. Wait a minute, you're a chef?
Oh, he's a chef.
Very cool. He said, and do y'all think that Iran would really get involved in Ukraine?
And Danny B, aren't you the Matthew, if I'm remembering this correctly, Danny B, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, but you're that chef out there in, I think, Colorado Springs, right? That, wait, no. It was like southern Denver, wasn't it? Like near Greenwood Village or somewhere around here, that was like that chef at some kind of a place down here. You remember the place I'm talking about, Matthew? It was like Topgolf, but for basketball.
I think so. I think I do remember that.
If Danny B, if you're that chef, I'm so sorry that I forgot that and had a lapse for a moment. If that is the wrong place, I'm also sorry about that as well. But I think you're that guy. If I remember correctly, you are that guy. And if so, it's incredibly cool to hear from you again. And I can relate to that. Sometimes days aren't great. To be entirely honest, without getting into a lot of details, Matthew kind of said it there a second ago. It's relatable. We didn't really have that great of a day. Things went on in the background that weren't the best. Like, that's really the best way I can word that without getting into it at all. And it's, days aren't always the best, but sometimes you just got to soldier on. And I hope that we've been able to kind of reflect that a little bit tonight, that we just soldiered on. Maybe because some of y'all can tell I'm a little bit more monotone because I'm still kind of worn out from it, to be entirely honest. But nevertheless, I got to say, I hope that we've been able to be an alleviation to some of the rough day that you've had today, Danny B. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now and keep this thing running, so that way we can get the news out to everyone like we do, and also hopefully give everyone a little bit of a laugh or make everyone's day just a little bit better by being on air. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And do I think Iran would really get involved in Ukraine? I think they probably wouldn't. Iran's probably got enough problems as it is dealing with Israel. And so I would say, although I could be wrong, North Korea kind of proved me wrong with this kind of an idea or a mindset. They're probably going to be focused more on Israel than Ukraine, but they could also get involved and send a small expeditionary force as well. Although I find that to be a little unlikely at the moment. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And yeah, it was Matthew.
Hey, that's him. Yeah, the basketball social house.
Yeah, that was the one in South Denver. It was, oh man, I'm so happy I remembered that, because I remember we looked at that and I was like, that is like one of the coolest things I had ever seen. We wanted one here in Birmingham actually when we heard about it. But still, we will have to come out there and try out some of your delicious cooking, because that would be incredibly cool. I'm still going to see about taking you up on that offer someday. That would be neat. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also, by the way, I just got to give a big shout out to Denver for their weird runway arrangement at the Denver International Airport. Very geschickt in Deutschen Welt kind of a thing, you know.
Shite.
Scheisse, you mean? Oh man, that's not a good arrangement. Like, I don't know if anyone knows that. Like, you know, that's not good.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's real bad. And then they have like the weird paintings in this thing too. Like they have like the freaky horse. This airport is just whack. Like, I think that's the only way I can describe this thing. The whole airport is whack. So let me see if I can get y'all down in here into the terminal and show y'all some of it. I've never seen these before. I've never seen any of that. Let's see. Where in the world are the weird paintings? They actually do have some cool statues, though. Like this one of the astronaut on Apollo 13, John Swigert. So that's pretty cool. And some of the airport, though, is a little weird. Like, I would just have to say it is weird. But one airport I really did like, one of the airports that we've been in, because we haven't been in a lot, we've been in a few, is the one at Seattle, the Seattle International Airport down here. This was so cool. I love this airport. It just had like a great vibe, like a great aesthetic. The TSA folks here were so nice. Like, it was literally a great airport. Like, if I had to give an airport a raving review, it actually would be this one. I just think it was one of the best. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Purple Gerbil, who put in a $20 donation. And it's good to see you once again, Purple Gerbil, and thank you very much as always. And they said take a live chat and LSA forever. And yes, indeed, LSA forever. And we shall grab a live chat question in honor of Purple Gerbil. And guess what? The question goes to Purple Gerbil on the live chat, who says, can the U.S. Congress declare war without presidential approval?
Yes, that is literally the entire, well, actually, man, you're the poli-sci major. Is that possible? Let me ask you. That's more in your wheelhouse.
Yes, the Congress can declare war. The president can send troops under his authorization. He can send them and basically start a war, but Congress has to actually approve the war when it gets started. It's kind of weird, but it works that way somehow.
And so I hope that, you know what, let's just go read the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so let's go to the U.S. Constitution. All right, so here we go. So we'll just read the founding article. So let's see. So Section 1 of Article 1, this is, of course, about the Congress. Article 1 is about the Congress. Like, just to let y'all know, Article 1 is the Congress, Article 2 is the Supreme Court, and Article 3 is the executive, the office of the president. Some people are so stupid. Like, this actually pissed me off, because back in 12th grade, Matthew, I had this, you actually had the same teacher when you were in 12th grade, but we had this stupid, like, American government teacher who said that the articles actually highlight the importance of each branch, and so obviously the Congress should override the other two. I was like, that is like the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because what the hell is the checks and balances for? Like, that person was an idiot, like a true hardcore idiot. And also, just to put this out there, they were so political, they make Hot Dog Man look like he's non-political. Like, that's the kind of person it was, and I was like, oh my god. Like, it's always those people who just don't understand how the government works. Like, you know, like the people who are like, actually, he's not the president because when they swore him in, they didn't fire a cannon. It's like, where in the world does the Constitution say they have to fire a cannon? Like, it's like nowhere. Like, that's all formality. It's a ceremony. Like, that guy got elected as the president. He's the president now. It's like, that's how it works. That's how it will be. But anyways, let's see here. House of Representatives. So this lays out how they're elected. Let's see. the minimum age 25 years, 7 years a citizen, and when elected, it has to have been an inhabitant of the state which shall be chosen. And so let's see here. Also, by the way, this part is dated because this actually laid out what the House of Representatives was made of, and this has changed massively because we've had so many more states added to the Union, well, really the Republic, as well as the population growing, so the amount of representatives has massively changed, like incredibly. But beyond that, the Senate, crap, let's see here.
So here's something for you right here. It says right here, the Declare War Clause in Article 1 grants Congress the power to authorize the President to conduct both total war as well as more limited uses of force. Total war is authorized by a declaration of war which provides the President with the entire and unqualified use of the U.S. military. Otherwise, the President can only use the forces in limited means and only for a specific amount of time authorized under the Presidential War Powers Act. Or that law, the Presidential War Powers Law. But that is basically how it works right there. But Congress has to declare war. But of course, in the modern day, it really sort of does not work like that because the president can send troops out and start a war and then find loopholes to keep them out there and never really truly declare war. And kind of like we've done in the Middle East, where it's always there with no actual war being declared sometimes. So it's kind of weird.
And also, we've seen right here, their power is to declare war. And from what I can tell in the Constitution, there is absolutely no requirement that the president has to request a declaration of war by the Congress. So the Congress could unilaterally declare war, and then it's the job of the president of the United States to follow out with the persecution, well, not the persecution, but the prosecution of that war, and to follow it through to its end, to its natural end, whatever that would end up being. Let's see. And let's see, grant letters of marque. Man, I never knew that. Wait, hang on. You know what the letter of marque is, Matthew?
No.
It grants civilians the ability to conduct piracy in the name of the government.
Can they grant me a little marquee?
Dude, I completely did not know that was actually in Section 8 of Article 1. Because if y'all didn't know, the whole reason that piracy in the Caribbean existed is because the British government, the Crown, gave out loads of letters of marque during a war with France to a load of English privateers. And after the end of the war, the British government said, okay, y'all can't steal from French vessels anymore. And then all of the privateers said, you know what, why don't we just ignore what y'all said right there and just keep stealing stuff off of other ships, and thus the entire situation with the piracy in the Caribbean came into being literally overnight. So that was all from a letter of marque. I did not know that the U.S. Congress could grant letters of marque. Like, I did not know that, actually. That's actually really interesting. But they also have to provide and maintain a navy as an entire, like, power of the Congress, like just to make a navy, and to also raise and support armies. Nothing about the Marines, the Air Force, the Space Force, the Coast Guard, or anything else. It's just the Navy and the Army. But that was all that existed at the time. So let's see. To make rules, regulation of land and naval forces. Also, here we go, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. This is probably one that's always interesting to me because a lot of people always go, when they talk about the Second Amendment, they always say that the militias are just these like random like groups of people who just pop up like Tom, Dick, and Harry created the Tom, Dick, and Harry militia. The Congress has the power to call for militia, so that shows that there's some sort of like a government raised militia, like any militia is a government raised one. And not only that, like Tom, Dick, and Harry can't raise militias to fight against the government because the literal job of raising a militia in the Constitution is to suppress insurrections, and an uprising of citizenry against the government would be considered an insurrection. So you can already see right there that whole thing kind of goes to the wayside. And someone's about to say, oh my god, the Enforcer's anti-gun, not knowing that I own like 30. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. But the Constitution is a very interesting thing to read because, you know, I know the general overlay of the Constitution and everything in it, but I've never really sat down and read it in detail for like the past 8 years. So some of the stuff is really interesting to read like a second time. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. Now that we've actually read the Constitution, the Congress can unilaterally declare war without the request of the president. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Area 51 Aliens Exist, who puts in a $15 donation and says, would it be possible to see a Shea steam engine and explain why the boiler is offset?
Oh, yeah. That would be cool. A Shea steam locomotive. Have you ever seen a Shea, Matthew?
I've never seen that.
These things are cool.
That is kind of cool. It reminds me of that little model thing that like they, drive the children around on. I know they have that little small little like Christmas thing.
All right. That's an interesting way.
You never seen that?
I have seen it, but I was like, I don't know why the hell you would think that, man. But beyond that,
in other words, Santa Claus is whipping it bit.
Okay, that was pretty funny. But moving on from that, what is cool about the Shea, to explain like the whole thing here, is that the railroads at the time, logging companies in particular, really wanted a torque beast, and most standard locomotives do have an insane amount of torque. Anything that's steam powered, like a vehicle that's steam powered, is usually torqued up. But they needed even more torque to deal with steep grades and heavy loads. And so they had to come up with a way to pretty much exert equal tractive effort onto every single wheel at a time when electromotive diesel engines did not exist, and they had to do it with steam. So what they did is that they created the Shea. And the Shea locomotive is a piston-driven steam engine. Like, it's not like a Walschaerts valve gear or something along those lines like on most steam locomotives. It literally has pretty much a steam-powered car motor on the side of the thing. Like, that's the best way I can explain it. It has, there's a different number of them, but it can have anywhere in between one, I think, up to multiple pistons that are independently driven by steam input into the piston, and it literally cycles just, well, kind of like in like basic principle, a lot like an internal combustion engine in a car. And this is able to exert power onto a crankshaft down at the bottom, which you can see going along the whole length of the locomotive here, which is able to transfer power equally to all of the driving wheels of the locomotive, and it gives it an insane amount of torque, an insane amount of tractive power, but it greatly reduces its speed. These things are not fast at all. Most of them, I don't even think could break like 20 miles an hour most of the time. It was really tough for them to do that, but these things were absolute torque monsters. But the reason why the boiler is offset to the side is because they had to make room for the pistons over here. And there was no way to put the pistons in the boiler because the boiler wouldn't be able to boil properly. So what they did is that they just moved the whole boiler to one side of the locomotive and then put the pistons on the other, thus creating the Shea. It's a really cool locomotive. These things were seen a lot back in the day, but nowadays they're more so like novelty pieces that are run at heritage railroads, but they are still incredibly cool. I just think they're some of the neatest things ever, and there's so many cool things that you just don't know about until you start looking more at like locomotive engineering. Like, this is incredibly cool, Matthew. This little thing right here, you see that little thing with like the red like side little cup thing on it right there?
Yes.
And it has this big pipe that's shooting out steam. This thing is a dynamo. It's a little electric generator, and the entire time the steam locomotive is running, you can turn on the dynamo, and so the steam will go through the dynamo. It will spin the turbine inside of it, and it creates electricity to run any electrical items on the locomotive, like the main headlight.
That's pretty handy. That's actually pretty ingenious.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then they also have this thing right here, like this little tin can looking thing that's behind it, that's vertical. That is a compressor. And what it does is it produces compressed air, so that way when you connect the locomotive with the air hose right up here to another rail car, and you connect the two air hoses together, it shoots air pressure into that rail car and it releases the brakes on it. And you can actually use the compressor to apply the brakes and release the brakes to every single rail car on the train simultaneously.
That's pretty cool, man. I definitely did not know that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man, this stuff is cool. I mean, like, I absolutely love steam locomotives. I'll be honest with y'all, though, I do know why they were replaced with diesel engines, because diesel engines are just cheaper and far easier to maintain, and they also don't break down as much. But steam engines were truly a craft. Like, they were an amazing kind of an invention. When you look at everything that really went into them, when they operated, it's like, this stuff was crazy. I mean, especially towards the end, when we started talking about Northern class locomotives, Northern locomotive. Let me see if I can. Okay, so let me just put in 484, which would be a Northern. And here we go. These are crazy. Like, these things are literally the peak of like passenger rail steam engine engineering. These things are crazy cool. Like, they had everything, man. They had compressors, they had dynamos. Their dynamos were more concealed, though. You don't really see the dynamos much on a Northern anymore, like you see on a Shay or something like that. But they had blowers, which would make a draft in the firebox to make it easier to produce even more heat. They were supercharged. I mean, these things were incredible. It was it's really cool to get into like the whole technology and engineering of the time that they just kept putting into new locomotives, because it's like they were just souping these things up like a Hudson in the New York Central system by the end of its like history before it merged with Pennsy. Those things were just insane. I mean, what's even crazier, man? Like the Big Boy. Let me go put up the Big Boy here. The Big Boy isn't even the biggest steam locomotive that was ever made. And let me see if I can find okay, so we have the food, the people, the film, other uses, and then we got the Union Pacific Big Boy. Like this thing right here, how much horsepower do you think a Big Boy makes, Matthew?
Probably like 1,000 or something.
6,500.
Damn, man, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That is equivalent, I think, to 2 modern-day AC 4400 CWs. So you would have to have 2 modern, massive mainline diesel engines to produce the same kind of horsepower that a Big Boy could produce.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Like, these things were just nuts. They were the peak of engineering for the time. And it's sad to see that a lot of them disappeared because, you know, it's always an endless effort to try and preserve these things. There's actually a running Big Boy in the world, 4014. It still runs. And I believe the Union Pacific number 844, which is a Northern, still runs as well. And there's a couple of others out there, like the Norfolk and Western J-Class. And then there's also... I'm not really sure if this one's a Northern or not, but it's 4484, the Southern Pacific Daylight Northern, I believe it was. I'm not really sure if that one's a Northern. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. But those are still running these days, and they are truly marvels of engineering and technology for their time. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least like the whole side note on history and that stuff. And I thank you so much once again for support and bringing up the Shay so that way I could talk about cool locomotive engineering for just a little bit. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, Melanie, you are correct. The Allegheny did have more power, and honestly, I think they were aesthetically more pleasing. But I don't think any Alleghenies survived into the modern day. And let me show this one. Matthew, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God. They actually did. I didn't know this. They actually do exist, apparently, as static pieces. But I personally think Alleghenies look cooler than Big Boys because they just had a lot more, like, I guess you could say, plumbing that was visibly external, and also a lot more external machinery as well, which is incredibly cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Man, I mean, these things were neat, man. Really, for real. I mean, man, look at that thing. I mean, these things were just cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to David Castillo, puts in a 10. And thank you very much, David. He said, you mentioned that we needed to prepare over the next 5 years. And to clarify, do you think this is inevitable war is actually 5 years away and not sooner?
I would have to say it could be sooner. But the problem is that war planning can't happen overnight. Like all of these things that I was talking about, the increasing of the production of the war industry and such things, we can't like kickstart that in 6 months. It takes a while for that to get worked up. And we actually did that before World War II. Like a lot of people don't know this. Our general uninvolvement in World War II was kind of a desperate bid in the background by the government to secretly start building up war production abilities so that way when the war began, we weren't literally at ground zero. We had made it a little bit off the pad and kind of up into the air a little bit in a way. So when I say 5 years, we have to kind of work off of a 5-year plan. And if the war starts earlier than that, then we have to rush it even quicker. But it generally would take about 5 years to bring everything up to speed like I was talking about. It's not that the war will be 5 years from now. It's just that it would take about that amount of time to get ready, to be entirely honest. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that also clarifies that a little bit. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Adam McLean, who puts in a $10 donation. And a huge shout out to you, Adam, for that support. He said, I'm just testing the super chat.
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for testing the super chat. It does look like it's working. And I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to, let's see here, it's going to go to Deb O'Leary, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Deb, as well. They said, hey guys, and are we going to get the old team back again, Australia and New Zealand, and you guys a winning combination, and where you guys go, us Kiwis go?
Hey, and of course the Anzacs would be back. The Anzacs are always a thing. We love the Anzacs, and Anzac cookies are delicious. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, and hopefully we would see that the gang would get back together again down there, and we would see the Anzacs together again. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Khan, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, Khan, as well. He said, I was in Iraq, and what they do is dig a hole and stack 4 to 6 anti-tank mines on top of each other, with the top mine having the detonator, and it flips the armored vehicle sky high as it gets torn to pieces.
Yeah, that's actually something that they did a lot over there from what I was reading a while ago, and you have firsthand experience, so you would definitely know. I also heard, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but apparently later on, they started to, I think, put some kind of a copper lid on those things. So that way when they blew up, the copper would melt, because molten copper can actually go through almost anything. And I think that's why, not only along with a whole amount of anti-tank mines literally just disintegrating Humvees, but it was also the molten copper thing that was being used on the up-armored Humvees, and they also just started adding even more AT mines that brought about the MRAPs. If I remember that correctly, I think that was the thing, or they started using the molten copper on the MRAPs trying to punch through its armor. But that is still very interesting here, and that's something that we kind of see them doing a little bit in Ukraine, but not really. They just kind of lay their mines out on the surface, and they generally end up doing a really good job at that. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, and thank you for sharing that interesting war story with us, actually, because that was, man, those were rough times back in Iraq. The vehicle-based IEDs and the IEDs in general were really the entire thing about the war in Iraq for America. I mean, that was the thing that was killing literally anyone and everyone. Very few people, from what I remember, at least reading, and of course I don't have personal experience, I just read about it, ended up getting killed in direct action firefights and such things. They always got killed in IED or VBIED bombings, things along those lines. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Lord Lathos LSA once again, who puts in another 10, and huge shout out to you, Lord Lathos. He said, Matt got it, Russia always lie, and yes, they do. He said, so he claims victory and originally claimed Nazis in Ukraine, so the Arshat can save face when forced to leave Ukraine, and did that clarify?
And yes, that does clarify, and I would say, I'm not really sure still, I don't know if they would want to do something like that, at least at the moment, but maybe in the future they would give that a shot and see if that would appease the Russian public, or at least allow them to save face, whether the Russian public liked it or not. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Khan, who puts in a 10 as well, and says, John Wayne said, wait a minute, hold on. Life is hard. I mean, I'm not going to try it. John Wayne said, life is hard. It's even harder when you're stupid. Ha 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 ha. I bet. He said, John Wayne was legendary.
Aw, man, Pilgrim. I almost turned it a hot dog, man. Aw, man.
Aw, man. I can attest to that quote. John Wayne's my hero.
No, John Wayne is not his hero, man. Like, it's a, aw, man. You know who's my hero? Aw, man, I can tell you if you want to know. Aw, man, it's me. Or something like that. I'm my own hero. Real narcissist behavior right there. But beyond that, I would have to say John Wayne is pretty cool. I like some of the movies he was in, like The Longest Day and The Green Berets. I thought those were really good movies. I watched them when I was a kid. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And what in the world is an AC6000? What? Oh my god. Wait a minute. Does this ring really have 6,000 horsepower? Oh my god. Oh, how many of these things exist? 317. I'll have you know, I didn't even know that an AC6000 existed. I thought the 4000s were like the biggest they got, because I always heard that 3500 and 4000 horsepower was kind of like the standard these days on most main lines. I did not know that they produced freaking 6,000 horsepower diesel electric locomotives, like, well, EMDs. I did not know that. That is crazy, and I thank you for sharing that. I really do. It's very nice of you. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And before we move on to the next one, we've got a big announcement. Matthew is getting off for the night. Matthew, take it away.
And I'm having to leave again for the night, folks, because to be honest with you all, my schedule is so packed during the day. While I'm not doing the short war summary, I'm literally working on something every single minute of the day. And like we said, today was a hell of a day. It was a busy one, a little bit of a stressful one, and very busy. So tomorrow is also the same thing again tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off early tonight, so that way I will be in fighting shape tomorrow for the stream again tomorrow night. Not too exhausted to even go tomorrow. But once again, thank you all for tonight for the kind words and also the support on the stream as well. We appreciate it. And also, thank you all for watching the short war video today as well. So I'll see you all tomorrow. I'm going to turn it over to the Enforcer to go on through the spreadsheet. And also, all the super chats are there, all the live chats are there, and so is the Morse code as well. So I'll see you all tomorrow, and get some rest and good night.
But before you get off, though, Matthew, I have to make sure that the spreadsheet can be pulled up, because the entire night I have not had the spreadsheet in hopes that would help out with the lag, hopefully not taking up too much memory on the computer. So let me see if I can find it really quickly before you go. And I found it, and we're golden, Matthew. Have a great...
Hey, look at that. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Get some rest, folks, and LSA.
And LSA, and good night to Enforcer Matt. And so with that, we are now moving on to the next one. While Enforcer Matt finally gets a good night's sleep. And we're moving on to the next one, which is a $7 super chat from Jordan Drew. Hey, it's put in a 7. And Jordan Drew said... And let me make sure that I mark that red right there in the spreadsheet. No way, America okays the Israeli counterattack. Too much risk for the oil market and global stability. What's your opinion? We've told them not to hit the oil, so we've now heard that the Israelis are not hitting the oil or nuclear facilities, so we really don't know what they're hitting. But yes, I would agree. It seems as though America is wanting to avoid the global oil instability in the markets during this time. So I would agree. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Not For One Yet For All Ukraine. And they said, the coffee from the hot snow warms the LSA. Apart from the 6 birds, they will be eaten for the Sunday fundraiser. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for throwing that in, because I thank you for the support and allowing us to have more coffee made of snow, so that way we can enjoy a nice burn on a Sunday. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Kachillian343. And Kachillian said, North Korea is being a good puppet for Russia right now. I wonder how China feels about Russia playing with their toy when they have their own ambitions. And that's a good question. I wonder how they feel. I honestly think China doesn't really care, because North Korea kind of does what they want most of the time on their own anyways. But maybe they do. Who knows? Who really knows? Only the Chinese, only Xi Jinping knows personally. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Kachillian. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat for Not For One Yet For All the Ukraine. And they say, I can't stop watching that propaganda video from North Korea a decade ago, LMFAO. This one awaits his heroin. We all live in tents. Yeah, that was the crazy thing about it. I've been told that apparently that was a translation by a comedian. So let me see if I can find North Korean anti-American propaganda. And so let me see if I can find this let me see if I can find this And so let's see, North Korean anti-American propaganda. So let me see if I can... Okay, hang on. Hold up.
How Americans live.
Hold up. Oh no. Hold up, y'all. Hold up. I gotta see if this is actually a thing. Was this really a thing? Okay, so I found it on another source. I don't want to show it though, because it's a Russian source, but they also reported it way back in the day that was a legitimate translation of the propaganda video. So it looks, and I might be wrong, but it seems as though enough people are saying it that was a legitimate translation of what the North Korean propaganda was saying. So with that, I will have to say, the North Koreans are truly that sad. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and get to laugh at North Korean propaganda. Also, really quickly, let me see if I can go and find it again, at least the one that we had the other day, because it was hilarious. So let me go grab it. So let's see here. Let me scroll down. Let me scroll. Oh, I see it. Come on, YouTube history. There we go. Ah, oh Lord, this is hilarious.
Gay, drinking coffee made from snow and living
drinking coffee made from snow
in tents and buying guns to kill each other, especially children.
Man, especially children born heads in there. I bought guns to kill each other, especially children. It's like, they just had to add that one in, didn't they? But let's see here. I want to find the one about the birds. Oh, here we go. Here it is.
Common in modern-day America. The American Red Cross supplies curtains and walls from material from North Korea. Again, there are no birds in the trees apart from these, which will be eaten on Tuesday.
Oh my Lord, these will be eaten on Tuesday. It's like, these are specifically cordoned off to be eaten on that day. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And before we move on to the next one, I am seeing some people again say that the video is real, the translation isn't. And I wish, and if y'all can find me the real translation, please do, because we haven't been able to find it yet. But if that is not the real translation, that was still hilarious. Whoever did that has to make a masterclass on comedy, because that was the funniest thing ever. But moving on from that, we also have a $2 super chat from Seth Jensen. Hey! And Seth said, just power our war machine with snow. Forget oil. And yes, Americans run their war machines on coffee made of snow. And I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is from MMM Vlogger, who threw in a 5 and said, it's been a while since you've had merchandise. Just a random thought I had. And that's true. It has been a while since we've had merchandise. Sadly, things have gotten really busy behind the scenes, and also things have changed in some good ways and not so well in others. But nevertheless, it's made it a little difficult for us to be able to run the merch store, or find the time for that matter. We are trying to start it up again, but we don't know when that will be, but hopefully we'll be able to kickstart that by the time of the next anniversary of the LSA. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Vlogger. And with that, we are on to the next, which is a $5 super chat from Robert Tusker 20. And Robert Tusker 20 said, we need Alabama to hyperspeed production of the THAAD system. 24-hour production, if necessary. Go Bama. And I'd agree, the folks down in Troy are going to have to get to work. 24-hour schedules, no breaks. Workers' comp, non-existent. Get your ass on the assembly line. But beyond that, I have to thank you so much for the support, because it helps us to be able to buy coffee made of snow and to force the American workers in their horrific conditions to continue to work to produce weapons of war. But I do thank you so much once again for the support and making this channel possible, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Quantum Fighter. And Quantum Fighter said, man, not complaining, but my girl has a huge crush on Matt. Keep talking, man. Your voice is spinning out a whole lot of weird ways. And I don't know about that, Quantum Fighter, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Barry Badgernet. And Barry Badgernet said, when will Ukraine draft 18 to 25-year-olds? This would show willpower. Barry Badgernet, we do not know. The current minimum conscription age is 25. The current minimum conscription age in America is 18. We don't know when they're going to be changing it, but eventually they will, and we don't know when. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep this thing going. And so with that, Thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that this was just said incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Area 51. Aliens exist. And Area 51, aliens exist, said, can we see a photo of the 4449 locomotive? And of course you can, my friend. Of course you can. And that is the Southern Pacific Daylight. Look at it right there. And I believe that is a Northern. And it is a Northern. Everyone loves Northerns. There is nothing better than Northerns. And this one is actually pulling an Amtrak train. I think there is a Genesis back there. So I'd assume it's an Amtrak train, but nevertheless, incredibly cool. The Southern Pacific 4449 is an impressive northern locomotive, and you can actually see it here, painted up in its bicentennial livery, an incredibly cool one, showing off the amazing American spirit. But nevertheless, we can see the Southern Pacific Daylight here as well, hauling the charge, along with the Union Pacific 844 behind it, another northern class from Union Pacific, and an incredibly cool one to see. I have to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I'd also like to point out a very interesting thing about the American Southwest. At the time, there was a belief in the American railroads, such as the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, along with the Southern Pacific, that if they were to paint the front of their locomotives a bright chrome color, that would help out with stopping people from getting themselves killed on railroad crossings. You can see this on really any Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe locomotive, as well as any Southern Pacific Daylight locomotive that was around in the late 1920s all the way up until the end of the steam locomotive's existence in those companies. An incredibly interesting fun fact at that, and a very interesting one to once again remind everyone about. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible and allow us to show people the amazing northern locomotives of the United States of America. And moving on from that and into our next super chat, we were able to get a $5 super chat from Ed, Irish Ed here, and LSA, Irish Ed here. And what was the name of that train that had to go up a huge hill? I think it also had wheels that were gear-like, and the tracks also. Those are cog railways, my friend, and cog railways are an incredibly interesting sort of a system. Allow me to show you some of them. These are the cog railways, and specifically the Mount Washington Cog Railway. These railways were designed to deal with incredibly high inclines, found usually in the Alps and also the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachians of the United States of America. These railroads were meant to tackle some of the steepest grades in the world that railroads dealt with. I'll be able to show you all really quickly the grades that this railroad dealt with. Observe, as you can see, the cog railway traveling its way up the mountain in this picture right here. These railroads were incredibly interesting as the locomotives were actually cannoned at an angle. Allow me to show. I cannot show y'all in that one. Allow me to show y'all in another one. You can actually see right here the entire locomotive is tilted at an incredibly high angle. This is a very interesting engineering phenomenon, as boilers cannot operate at incredibly steep angles on a flat axis with their chassis. For this reason, the boiler was actually cannoned about 30 degrees forward, as well as the operating cab as well. This allowed for the locomotive to be able to operate on high inclines and at the exact same time to be able to move the passengers that it needed to successfully. An incredibly interesting kind of a system, and certainly something that still exists largely around the world. We can still, in fact, see that the Washington Cog Railway still continues to operate to this day. We can actually see a picture here of the railroad in operation in the year 2000 in black and white, interestingly enough. And you can also see it in 2012 right here with a cog railway locomotive that is diesel powered, meaning that it doesn't have to account for the boiler's cant forward. We can also see here some hikers watching the cog railway as it travels on up the mountain. And these are just incredibly cool systems. Allow me to show you some other locomotives. Here is one. Once again, you can see the cant of the boiler forward to make sure that the water doesn't slosh around too much and that the boiler doesn't have an I guess you could say a disproportionate water supply to one side that would be leaving the firebox pretty much wide open to explode. But still, these railways are incredibly neat, and I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible each and every single day. And so with that, a huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one, which is a $4 super chat from Eric Ellingwood, who said, "Marmots hooray for the flag of the free. Would you like a plum?" And I would love a plum right now, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I would of course love to show the marmot. But at the moment, we are starting to run considerably out of time, as we do have a great deal of super chats to cover, about 20 more beyond this one, and we do want to make sure to get to each and every single one of them, and some live chats as well. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, We have a $3 and a $2 super chat from TJX Braveman and Dean London. And I have to thank both of y'all for the support, because while y'all didn't throw in comments, the support is greatly appreciated and helps us to continue to make this channel's operations entirely possible. Moving on from that and into our next one, we were able to get a $2 super chat from Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee stated, "For the Hot Snow Coffee Fund, and hi corgis and marmot, and hello to the marmot, and hello to the baby corgis. They are out there sleeping at the moment, and I gotta say, I thank you so much for your kind words to the marmot and the corgis, and also a big hello to the Hot Snow Coffee Fund. I could certainly use some at the moment, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running." And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Jason Curling. And Jason Curling said, "How did North Koreans give orders if they don't have NCOs?" An incredibly interesting question. This has been an issue with most Soviet militaries and most communist militaries around the world. Usually, with the lack of NCOs, junior officers of the actual officer class continue to have to operate and fill in the roles of the non-commissioned officers in most Western militaries. For this reason, in a position where you would see a sergeant, you usually see a lieutenant. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for support, Jason Curling, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are moving on to the next one. This is a $2 super chat from Stephen Mosher. And Stephen Mosher said, "Port Chongjin is translation of Korea." And I thank you for the support, and that is true. Chongjin is the translation for that. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and clarifying that just a little bit. And so with that, we are on to the next one. As you'll all know, what is going to be coming up next, as it is another $2 super chat from Stephen Mosher, who said, "Koryo Saram." And I thank you for the support, Stephen Mosher, and throwing that in, as that is very interesting to hear. Koryo Saram. And thank you once again for the support and making this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is the $2 super chat from Boy Kachina. And Boy Kachina stated, "China arranging all this to attack Taiwan. Sad. Maybe so. Who knows? Only time will tell. But I do thank you for the support, Boy Kachina, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible." And with that, we are on to the next one, which is another $2 super chat from Stephen Mosher. Big thanks to you once again. And Stephen Mosher said, "Japan grabs Kuril Islands." And that may entirely happen. The Kuril Islands are a little stretch of islands that span from the Japanese island of Hokkaido and all the way to the southern area of the Anadyr Oblast of the Russian Federation. These islands could possibly be retaken by the Japanese in some sort of a larger exchange with the Russian Federation, but we would most likely assume that those would be given back to the Russian Federation in some sort of a status quo antebellum treaty that would be created before a nuclear exchange was to happen. To avoid that, of course. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And another $2 super chat came in from Stephen Mosher. And Stephen Mosher said, Canada grabs Wrangel Island. And who knows, maybe they would all start grabbing islands. Maybe so. And I would be very interested to see if they did. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Wholesome Facts. And Wholesome Facts stated, "We are watching it happen, and roll tide indeed, and we are certainly watching it happen and sitting back and just kind of passing the time, waiting for it all to go down." And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Sean Curtis, who did not throw in a comment, but the support is greatly appreciated. And we also got a $2 super chat from Stephen Lucas, who said, "This sounds like a major gunfight," and it probably will end up being one, most likely, but hopefully not. We always hope that it won't be, but it really is starting to shape up like that these days. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. And we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Aeon Sai. And Aeon Sai said, "Love the channel, man. Keep it up." And thank you so much for the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help us to be able to keep up this great work by supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, a massive thanks to you once again, and a big shout out to Boba Basquez, who threw in a $10 super chat and said, "You are doing great, get some sleep, LOL." And I am hoping to soon. We are honestly getting okay sleep, but we are dealing with such stressful and strenuous and tiring things every single day. It's kind of wearing us down a little bit. We're going to have to eventually well, I'm not saying we're going to have to eventually. We are going to prioritize the show over everything else, because at this point, I'm not going to continue to deal with what we're dealing with in the background and get this worn out when we should be focusing on what's more important, which is our own lives. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Boba Vasquez, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Andrew Honeycutt. And Andrew Honeycutt said, "At least the North Koreans will have plenty of snow." And hopefully, they will. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And a big shout out to CGS Lady and Tommy Mac for both throwing in one without comments. Your support helps make this channel possible and keep it running. And with that, we have reached the end of all of our super chats, and we're now going to be moving on into our live chat segment. We are going to be answering 3 live chats and the Morse code decoders, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so moving on into the Morse code decoders of the stream, we have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsap, Sir Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. And they said, Morse for tonight from the LSA Signal Corps. North Korea openly joining the war is a step in the unwise direction for the axis of evil. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And and that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct for 968 days of the war, as y'all been doing an absolutely incredible job within getting that right time and time again. And so with that, a big congratulations to y'all. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night, which goes to Paul Schultz, one of the Morse code deciphers, actually. And Paul Schultz said, what will happen if Ukraine deliberately targets North Korean troops? They will die. That's about it. I don't really think there's going to be much else happening to them. They'll probably just get wiped out, and that will be the end of that for the large part. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Paul Schultz, we wouldn't be able to get that Morse code message, and we wouldn't be able to have an interesting question like that. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night, which goes to Michael McMahon. And Michael McMahon said, is it possible that China is pulling all the strings on the tensions in all of East Asia? The DPRK would not do anything without China's blessing. And it may be so, but China has less of a leash these days on the North Koreans than would be believed, because the North Koreans aren't really getting a lot from the Chinese these days anymore. They get a little bit of food, but still not enough. So the Chinese really don't have as much control on the Koreans or the North Koreans as they used to. So the North Koreans may truly be rogue at this point, with really no external control from just about anyone. But the Chinese may be pulling the strings still, because they do have their eyes on Taiwan. But even so, militarily, they aren't really ready for a Taiwanese ground invasion until about 4 or 5 years from now, based off of current estimates. But I do thank you so much for asking a really interesting question, Mike McMahon. That's a very interesting one to explore right there. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night is AF Kaplan. And AF Kaplan said, how much of a role do you think China is playing regarding the escalations on the Korean Peninsula? I would say, to really circle around again and answer a very similar question to Michael McMahon's, I don't really think they're playing in a lot, because the Chinese really don't want to destabilize the area, because causing a war in the Korean Peninsula would heavily destabilize the region. And the Chinese really want to try and not crap on their home, like, or crap on their front lawn, I guess you could say, because it will cause a lot of problems for them with their idea of national rejuvenation, which really has a lot to do with trying to avoid wars for the most part wherever possible. They know they can't really avoid it with the Taiwan situation in the end, but with the Korean situation, they could put that on hold indefinitely. So I don't really think the Chinese are that involved in that at the moment, and I think the North Koreans are kind of acting on their own due to external situations that have been going on in the peninsula for a good bit. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching, and I got to give a massive shout out to each and every one of y'all who have been here over the course of the night. 10.4 thousand people watched this stream at the peak, and 75,000 people have watched this stream at the point I'm rounding it out right now. We have been entirely honored and appreciative to have each and every one of y'all here every single night, enjoying these streams, and really enjoying the news that we cover. We are always happy to have y'all here, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.